I finally got the intro thing figured out. Stupid, nothing will work as far as resizing it for YouTube. It's a real pain in the butt. Well, hello everybody. How are you doing? Glad you're here. Misty, what you been up to?
Nothing.
I see you made another sign. What's that say?
Ass. That's what Rodney said. No, it's our SAS group. It's the Appalachian Sasquatch Seekers.
Uh-huh. Is that what that says?
And a Beast TV one.
I like the Beast one. Like that. I have that shirt.
Yeah, that was Layla's.
Oh, what? It doesn't fit her anymore? So you framed it?
Yep.
Good idea right there. Well, everybody, the one, the only, Kain Michael is with us today. So this ought to be a good one. Really have no idea where we're going to go or what we're going to talk about on this, because this man, if you do not know Kane, he can cover all topics. He's got it all. Thanks everybody for being in the chat and showing up already. And let's bring out Kane. There he is.
Hey everybody.
Hey Kane.
How's it going, brother? You having a good day?
It's been an awesome day so far.
Man, it looks like it's cold up there in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, we've been through. It's averaging in the 20s. So it's to the point now where, you get up around 28 degrees. It feels warm.
You can keep that. You can keep that. Do you think? Yeah. Do you think that affects the boogers at all?
I think so. I really do. I don't know. I mean, it's always a open question about, do they migrate? What happens? I've had encounters in the winter, but I do think they probably stay closer to a source that's warmer during the winter months. I don't know if they move south, but I think they probably move to areas where it is warm, or who knows? That's kind of one of the great questions.
I don't know what camera you're looking at, but you're looking to the side according to the screen. Just so you know. There you go. That's the camera.
Look at you guys.
Oh, you look up here.
Yeah, I like to look at the people I'm talking to and not a camera. So we'll see how it goes.
You do it whatever way you want.
Yeah, I'll try to do both. All right.
So for everybody who doesn't know, which I can't imagine there are many people who don't know Kane, but if you don't know him, Kane, he goes out a lot with Eric Tipton. He's in Ohio. He has a channel that is absolutely incredible called House of Enoch. Tons of information. So as I've explained before on this channel, we are not necessarily trying to prove, this is not the channel for like us examining and trying to prove Bigfoot. This is the channel where we're talking to people that, in my humble opinion, actually know a lot of the real deal stuff and, spend a lot of time in the woods and have tried to break a lot of this stuff down. And Kane is at the tippy top of that pyramid as far as, really going through all the stuff that's involved with creating data and looking at it and researching it and everything. And his channel, House of Enoch, has just tons and tons of good information and videos on there. But you really kind of got to go back to the beginning and start at the beginning of his stuff, because it compounds, it builds on each other. Some of the stuff he talks about now is stuff that he's gone over for the past, year or two, and it's a constantly evolving thing. But if you haven't seen it, you absolutely need to check it out. And as is the case with a lot of the people I've been talking to, I really don't know where to begin with Kane, because he has so much that we could get into. I mean, he really does. And he's one of my friends. I've camped with him several times. He's a crazy ass, absolutely, especially at the campsite. But this could just go any which way. So let me start out with something simple. Kane, if you were talking to somebody brand new coming into the Bigfoot world and they had just met you for the very first time and they were going to bombard you with all these questions about what is Bigfoot, what does it do, how do boogers move, how do they live, how do they, all this kind of stuff. What would be, if you were to tell them how you got into it, how did you get into it? And like, what has been your learning curve from like the beginning of when you started this stuff until now? Because it's an extreme learning curve, but can you kind of go over how you got into it, some of the stuff that really changed your viewpoints about this subject leading up to how you think about it now?
Yeah. I got into it actually through Eric. He confided into me about a sighting he had 20 to 30 years ago by now. And just he had enough confidence in me to broach the subject. Something I think I was probably the only second person he ever told in his life, this, the sighting that he had. And I kind of started it skeptical. But I had some paranormal stuff, if you want to call it that kind of changed my opinion from the time I was 16 on. I just knew not everything was what it seems, just through some of those experiences. And normally when I talk to someone who's fresh into this, the first thing I usually tell them is avoid the TV shows. Those are they're interesting, but they're entertainment. You're not going to find real good information off the TV shows, the mountain monsters and stuff that kind of makes a mockery of the subject. So get away from that. And normally what I do with someone that's new is I'm going to approach it as, what if there's a North American great ape? Now, I don't view it that way anymore, but that's how I start my conversations, because there's a lot you can go on. Every other continent has a great ape. And you kind of start from there, and then you start trying to show evidence. So you're not taking you're teaching someone from kindergarten. You're not throwing 12th grade at them. You're starting at just basic subjects to kind of tickle the imagination, to open them up to where eventually, if they take an interest, you can start deep diving into the subject. And through my website, House of Enoch, that's kind of what I try to do. It was kind of like a blog. At the time that I created this House of Enoch, it was just because I was not seeing a lot of real research out there. It was more like Bigfoot fan pages and memes and stuff like that. And there was no meat to nothing. And obviously, really, no one out there showing how to research. So that's kind of how I started. I wanted to create a page where people could log in and they could just follow along and just see what I was doing. Most of my videos, if you see, it's always the camera's pointed towards the woods, and it's just my voice, and it's not about me on camera. It's just me documenting what I'm seeing. And then the next big thing about House of Enoch is I never call something a Bigfoot. I'll say the individual, this or that, and I approach the subject like that and make the viewer question, if I'm doing my job right as documenting this, I want to give the viewer as much information as they can to formulate their own opinion. And if they disagree with something, if they're disagreeing with something that I've posted, a fact or something like that, that's awesome. Because now we're bringing it into subjects, and maybe they disagree with this or this, but we're narrowing it down to where the narrative isn't wide open. It's okay. I don't agree that they do this or that. It's just not a blanket. Well, you're crazy and I don't believe anything you say. When you take the word Bigfoot out of it and just say, hey, man, I'm out here in the woods. This is where I live. This is what I document. Here's the prints I've got. What can it be? And let them try to formulate that answer. And that's kind of how I start with anybody.
Right. So you're not, again, like a few of us, you're not claiming that everything is Bigfoot, and you're not, putting even that preset out there. You're just saying, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm finding. I think that's a smart way to go about it. I mean, it leaves the whole thing open. It doesn't make you, because there's a lot of people in this field, if we're being honest, that come across like they've got a bunch of answers to this stuff. And, they kind of set it up as, this is what Bigfoot does. This is the way that they act and the way that they move and everything. I just, I kind of think that that's a little bit careless. But I like your kind of open-ended approach to it, where you're just presenting what you find and everything.
Yeah, I'm just theorizing. I mean, and what I try to do, if you hear me talk, a lot of times I'll say, this is my opinion, or this is my theory. I try not to say this is what they're doing, or speak in facts, because I mean, that can, if you don't have any facts to back it up, then and you can box yourself in real quick, and people are looking to do that. But if you just take the word Bigfoot out of it and just show your work, it's pretty successful. I've had, over the years now, family members have been watching silently, and many of them have came back. And sometimes your family members are your biggest critics, and be like, wow, I've actually been watching your page for years, and I had no idea. I had no idea that you were really this into it. Or, they start seeing the cast and they start seeing this, and then they come here, and, some of my family members have had experiences here. I'm thinking now there's probably at this property alone, probably about 12 people that have had stuff pretty unexplainable, and they're not Bigfoot researchers. They're just people, my sister, she's not a Bigfoot researcher. She was out back and doing something, got hit with a rock. That was for her like, wow, that was, I just got hit with a rock in the backyard. Maybe he's not so crazy, and that's how you build that rapport. You don't go too far into left field. You show your research, you show where you're at, and you try to document what you have, and just keep it very as scientific as we can, and just present it, and let people just see it, and try to give them all the answers so they can actually have an opinion. That's my goal. When you see a video of mine and I'm doing something, I want the viewer to walk away with enough information to have their own opinion. To make a true have a true opinion, you need really good information. There's always like the classic picture out in the woods. Someone just snapped a picture and there's a shadowy thing beside a tree. Means nothing unless you go back and do an after picture and show that, okay, now there's not a shadowy thing there. Now you have some substance to the topic you're talking about. But too much, you just get that one picture and people are going to dismiss it. And because you haven't done anything, you haven't given them anything. It's just a shadowy picture out in the woods. Give them some context to what you're trying to say. The deeper you do that, the better way they can formulate opinion on what you're presenting.
Yeah. Well, like you said earlier, it's really getting into the realm of, now we're providing evidence. Now we're providing
I've seen that.
But so if you have yeah, Larry. They come on here and start it. They come on here and start it.
I can put that up there, by the way, Kane. That was all Spencer. I wasn't going to tell on you like that.
I love it.
Well, you know, the thing is that to everybody that watches House of Enoch or knows Kane on like Facebook or whatnot, he does come across as like a scientist. He's very scientific in the way he goes about it. What they don't realize is he's a mad scientist. He's
in a fur coat.
In a fur coat.
Levels, yes. So, but anyway, so once you've gone down this path of like telling somebody about like the whole, you know, maybe it's a North American ape or whatnot. If the person really, let's not even go down that road. Let's go back to what got you. So Eric confided in you. You started going out with Eric. What was like some of the very first things that you saw that started to get you going, holy cow, there really is something to this?
It didn't take long. It was within the first couple of months of going out. One thing that we did is we just, I don't know why, but naturally we just kind of came to the conclusion that let's get off the trails. Let's get off the hiking trails and because most forests and national forest systems, there's a trail, a small trail, and then there's an area like this that's you're not allowed to walk through. So we broke the rules right off the bat and started going straight into those areas. We figured if there's anything interesting, that's where you're going to find it. And it was very early on. We found, it was in the winter, we found 2 separate trackways. These were a long ways. It was barefoot, probably the best prints I've ever seen in my life, of an adult and a small young, at the time I was thinking some kid, like who in the right mind would have their kid out here in this weather, an hour to the nearest road, walking barefoot. And at that time in my mind, I'm like, there's freaking hippies out here or something. But that is the first thing that really cued me in, because that ate on me the whole way home. I'm like, that's just no, that's not right. You know, I could see maybe an adult hippie or something, but a kid being out in the middle of the woods in the snow, barefoot. I just told you in Ohio, the average temperatures in the winter are 20 or below. And that was a day like that. Like you would have frostbite, you'd be frostbitten in an hour easily. And that was the first real sign that I had that like there's something going on here.
So adult hippies, no, it's got to be something else.
Well, the thing about it was just the kid. Like even you don't walk. This wasn't like a couple tracks. This is a long trackway that we followed. It wasn't necessarily it crossed some human trails, but we were completely off trail, just following these tracks. And of course, at that time, we didn't bring casting material. We didn't have none of that. You know, we at that time, the concept of this was, you know, Eric had seen something 20, 30 years ago, and it was kind of like, well, let's go out and see if we can find it. And that's how naive we were when we started. So we would just pull off the side of the road. We would look out and find a ridge somewhere, and we'd be like, let's go there. And that's how we started. And then eventually, within that first year doing it that method, we started getting a lot of weird stuff. Encounters with tree knock is an understatement for one of our first encounters. It was like we got surrounded. Not too far from here, actually, Southern Ohio. And just a normal day hiking through the woods, and all hell breaks loose within a second. Like so disoriented. These things were hitting a tree so hard it sounded like a machine gun. Like I don't know if you can tap a tree as fast as it was knocking. And as it was hitting this tree, you could hear the splinters. I mean, this thing was wailing a tree at a speed like a machine gun. And we started getting rocks thrown at us. And then we was hearing rock clacking. And, you know, we've talked about this. I climbed this tree. I was trying to get a visual, and something came up behind Eric, and he was down. He's down at the bottom of the tree. I'm like 30, 40 feet up this tree trying to get a visual. And he's contemplating jumping off a freaking cliff.
Yeah.
I mean, and then just like that, everything just stopped. And that day, we hiked at least a mile radius, because I'm like, I'm not buying this. You know, we thought someone might have been messing with us or something, but that was a huge day where, you know, and we found nothing. I mean, we were so far off trail at that point that there was no human activity out there that we could see. And definitely, I don't know how a human could have gotten away from us so fast, because after the initial 5-10 minutes, you collect yourself. We're searching. We're making a radius around this whole site, and it's just empty. It was very perplexing.
So, whenever you say that you found nothing, so you didn't see anything on the way into that spot that told you were in the right area. You just kind of stumbled into that spot.
Yeah, that one in particular, because at that time we were just getting off the beaten path and just going. And it was just like, I don't know I would say, like, if there's a hiking trail, maybe if I had to estimate, maybe 2 ridges away from a normal hiking trail or something, where we were, and a lot of times where you might find activity. And the way I theorize it is, you get, you know, these things are watching people on hiking trails every day. You know, they're watching wherever. That's not going to cause any alarm. It's kind of, they're expecting people to be there. But when you get 2 dudes coming over a ridge that no one's crossed in 20 years, all of a sudden you're coming right towards them, I feel like that causes a sense of alarm. And that first thing you might hear is a tree knock, because they're warning the other ones, hey, we got 2 idiots, you know, not where they should be. And that's how we started. We would hear a tree knock in the distance by being off trail, and we would go right towards that tree knock. That's how we started everything. And that's what got us into eventually doing this over many years, that kind of became like a pattern. Okay, the first thing you might hear a tree knock, you go towards the tree knock. The next thing that might happen is you might start getting things thrown at you. If you keep pursuing, even then, you're going to hear what I call like the displays of strength out in the woods. And these are like very large trees and branches just slowly cracking. And like you're getting warned at that point, like, if you continue this, something bad is going to happen. And to the point to where it just keeps escalating until, even if you're a slow learner, they are going to move you out of those woods. I mean, it's and that's repeatable. That's something Eric and I have done over the years, and have repeated that exact same process and just kind of backed out when we feel like we've pushed it as far as we can push it. But we've documented that same behavior. And I think that's what happens with some people, is they don't realize that they're in any danger at all, because you're not supposed to be real. So they're giving you the warning signs. And as most people are, we're unaware that there's anything, that warning is being given to us, and we stumble into an area and push too far unknowingly, and bad things can happen. And I truly believe that.
So if you guys in the beginning, if you were just going out there and you were getting off trail and everything, and you stumbled into some of these locations, But you've gotten to a point now where you guys have almost developed a methodology for how to go about like finding the areas. Because I mean, let's face it, there are 2 or 3 kinds of people that actually are interested, that would be watching a show like this. And it's the people that are watching for entertainment. So they want the stories about what happened. There are people that are half-heartedly doing the research, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not arguing against that or anything. And they're looking for little tidbits. And then there are people that are actually going to watch stuff like this, and they're going to try to get, they're taking notes on what you say. Okay. So, and I know you're not going to divulge anything that you don't want to, but if you were to go into a new area, knowing what you know now, if you were to go into a brand new area and you were like, these are some of the qualities I'm looking for to tell me that boogers are in this area, I think that they would be in this area. If you were to go to a whole separate state and you were going to try to narrow down how people actually could go about finding these things near them, because I mean, if we're being realistic about it, you and Eric are the people to ask on this subject, because you guys have a record of being able to go out and find high quality areas with this. So just so we're clear, if you go out and for these areas, that's completely on you. But I'm asking you, what would you recommend to somebody that was being cautious, was aware of them, was actually trying to at least dial in how to go about finding them? They're willing to go off the trail. They're willing to go in there and look for them and everything. What kind of areas would you be looking for? What would you recommend for some of the people that actually want to get in the game and find these?
One thing I would say is when you're out, one thing that we did is anytime you have what you might call an encounter, you should be GPSing that spot, and you should be not only GPSing that spot, but saving and looking at your contour maps, your topo maps, seeing what the area looks like, and remembering that, and then keeping a record of that. Over these things don't happen. I mean, everybody gets lucky, but building this kind of what we do has taken years, but it's that. So Eric is the topo map guy. I don't hardly ever read topo maps. That's his thing. He can pretty much, and the reason why it works is we've looked at enough times where we've had something crazy happen and looked at the area itself, how it looks geographically. A lot of times it looks a lot similar. Like there are areas that we're going to say they favor certain types of habitats, right? You can find that out by tracking too. That's another thing we do, like the boots on the ground stuff. You do this enough, you track something enough, you kind of realize the areas that or maybe that just that they favor, they lean towards these things, and you learn that. I mean, if I followed you around for 2 months, I would kind of know your routine. Right. And I could go to a new city and I'm like, all right, I'm looking for Spencer. Well, Spencer likes this. He likes his cigars. And I could kind of paint a picture of where to start with. And when I started seeing those areas, oh wow, there's like 3 cigar shops in this area. That is Spencer's habitat. That's what he liked. It's the same kind of deal. It's by going and learning about the individual. I'm a big, you'll hear me preach a lot. People will find a track and they'll take a picture of it and then they just go on about their day. And that drives me crazy, because if that's really a track and you truly believe that's a footprint of an unknown animal, human, whatever you want to call it, or a Sasquatch, and all you did was take a picture and move on, and you didn't try to learn why it's there in the first place, that's probably the closest you're ever going to get. to a legend, and you're going to take a picture of it and walk away. You should use that time and learn everything about it. And that's kind of what we do. Eric's able to take that information over the years, look at a topo map and be like, that's a pretty good spot. That's a pretty good spot to go check. That's a pretty good spot. And then when we get in there, I look around because most of my research is walking in the woods and seeing things that look like familiar areas to me, and areas that I would think that they would favor. And then when you find those areas, usually then you might start seeing some signs, and then you kind of, if you look into, let's say, the tree structures, stuff like that, you'll start finding stuff that you've not found anywhere else in the woods. And trust me, we've hiked, we say 3,000 miles. That's nothing compared to what it is now. It's probably 5,000 to 6,000 miles of just not being on the trail. And I can tell you, there's thousands of miles that have nothing in it. But there's these threads that we call trackways where stuff gets interesting. You start seeing that stuff, you can start to, that's just one thing. And they're always in kind of the same areas, the kind of same geography. And this can even be, I was part of a conference called Project Zoo Book with Amy Boo. The Olympic Project, they found 27 nests out in the Olympic rainforest. You would lose your mind if you've seen how similar those nests were laid out as to what we look for. It's like it's like the playbook, know, and so a lot of this stuff is that's what we're doing.
Whenever you talk about like you guys call them trackways, but whenever you were talking about, and I've seen similar things where you go in the woods and you're looking all around, you don't see anything, but then boom, you'll find possible manipulation or structure and tracks like in one little area, but it's not over here, it's not over there, it's right here. Do you think, since you've had to go over this stuff and break down the data, do you think that they stay relatively on a course, like on a certain, not necessarily a trackway, but do you think that their trackways are all staying on a certain course, like a predetermined course? I mean, maybe they go off of it for food or, because of opportunity or because, somebody's building a house in the way where they used to move through and everything. But do you think that by and far they kind of move along a similar trackway unless they're disturbed?
Yeah, this is Kane theory here. Yeah, I think, it works until it doesn't work anymore. And right. I think those areas, from what we have found, there's always, even here on my property, there's always maybe 3 main trackways with 5 alternates, and those can change nightly. They don't have to use any of it. So my feeling is that as the family group moves along, you have, whether you want to call it a century, whatever you want to call it, there's one that goes before, goes ahead of the group, checks out. And this gets updated daily. All right. Coast is clear. Maybe those trackways are good for weeks, years, whatever. But as things happen, all of a sudden, the first one's moving through, sees 2 hikers up there. Let's change the course. It might leave a sign to tell the ones behind it, hey, or let's say a trail cam. It's not supposed to be there. I don't know, in their mentality, I don't know what this thing is, but we're going to avoid it. And its job is to notice that damn trail cam because his family depends on it to notice. So I think that's another part of the reason why trail cams and stuff are so hard to get those to have any kind of success, because there's something looking for that, for not just that. I don't care what it is. It's just not supposed to be there, and it avoids it. And when it avoids it, maybe it leaves a sign. You know, if Eric's following me and we get separated in the woods, and I know he's back there somewhere, I might put an arrow, like, hey, I went this way, man. You know, that's a very human thing to do. I don't think it's that far from that. That's some of the things we look at. That's even happened. We have literally went in on a trail clear in the morning and came out and had a structure built on our secret trail that we were using to sneak. I mean, that information is getting passed as we come back out. Here's a structure on our trail, you know, and that same structure, if you pay attention, seems to correlate with a lot of human trails. It's one of the things I've noticed. It's one of the things I document. Now, I'm not saying that's it, but what I'm saying is I can show you many of the same scenarios where there's a hiking trail here and there's the same type of structure here. Is that what it means? I don't know, but I mean, that's the case I'm building. And I believe that is part of it. And, but if why mess up a good thing? If you've got it, and that's kind of what I kind of equate to my property. My property didn't really have anyone living on it for 20 years. Just the occasional holiday. This was like a vacation home. So good part of the year you could go through this part. There's no one ever here. There's probably kind of a safe crossing. And I don't think anything lives here. I think things cross through here. And I think the evidence that I collect shows exactly that. And yeah, every once in a while I'll find structures or something. You know, I've documented everything that's on my property now is documented. So let's say this spring, I'm going to be out there. And if something new comes up, I'm going to know it because I know my property that well. And sometimes you could have a trail that has been used a long time, and then whatever happens, they deviate from that. And now there's another new trail, a trackway. And sometimes you get into a course of woods, and Eric and I have definitely found like 3. And we're like, oh, wow, this is old. And we keep looking, maybe 100 yards past that one, there's a new one. Wow, and finally find one with like fresh breaks. So they don't have to use anything. They are basing their trackway on daily information as it's happening. And I believe they leave signs to the others of what's going on. That's in a nutshell. That makes it pretty hard to track.
Well, Kane, whenever you're talking about their trackways, whenever they change them, you think maybe could they possibly be building them on animal trails to track the animals, and then maybe
I'll say this:
move on to another one.
Most of the time that we see, they crisscross animal trails. They don't necessarily use animal trails. And now a long time ago, we probably for 7-8 years, we kept this pretty quiet, but I've talked about it since then now. But in the winter, several years ago, this is back before I even lived here, and when I had my Galena property, I noticed in the winter, it was like, okay, there's stuff going on, but where in the hell's the tracks? You know, it was very perplexing to me. And finally, I found prints in a very active animal trackway. You know, it was a deer trail. And what I theorized is that these things are using that now, letting the deer cover their prints. I mean, but they were there. They had moved their tracks into that trackway, and I believe smart enough to know that the deer would cover their tracks.
And that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, start at it. You go from the Great American wood ape and you change your perspective, that maybe they're a little smarter than that, and a lot of things will start making more sense. And where I'm at with it is I don't box myself in anywhere. I don't believe it's just a wood ape. I believe it's a type of human. But tomorrow the evidence could come out and someone could sway I don't lock myself in a box, with anything. I don't think that's healthy. You take what you gather, your information, and in your mind, you can't help it. You're going to formulate an opinion where you're at this time. And my opinions change drastically the more I do this. To where I started to where I am now is because you're learning more. You're taking more notes. You're getting a better picture of what these things are. And what I see out there is signs of humanity. I don't see signs of a gorilla. I see signs of a type of person, a race, a humanoid, whatever you want to call it. Not quite us, but there's too much for me at this point, especially when we're talking about these trackways and some of the stuff that's left behind. I can't go there anymore. Now I'm fine with anyone that is. It's just where I'm at now is to me, it seems they appear to be a little too smart to be just a great American wood ape.
So what do you think as far as do you think they're tied in with anything supernatural, or do you think that they're just flesh and blood, or did you start out just thinking one way and then when the more that you learned, you changed what you thought about it? Or
I totally started out thinking it was probably going to be an ape. Whether it's supernatural or not, I'm not there yet, but I'm also not writing that off. Approached with a question like that, the paranormal side of things, the way I would answer that is, how would we test for that? Because I think I can make a pretty good case for that. I've got things that I could definitely go there with that, but how do you test that? How do you support that claim? Or is it just another type of people? In total theory right now, I think these things could be older than us. I mean, who's to say that we're not from them? And that gets with a lot of people. There's religion and stuff like that is heavy, a heavy factor. I even had someone tell me that their religious beliefs. So I don't think I can go there with you on that, and that's fine. Everybody has that. I'm not that guy. I'm here I'm wide open, and I believe in a creator and all that stuff, but I didn't lose my creator in going into the deep end, and I would never want to shake someone's faith personally to go that route. So it's a personal decision, but for me, it doesn't shake my faith at all. It's a big universe out there, and it wouldn't bother me a bit if these things. I mean, there is a lot of evidence that these things have been around as long as, if not longer than us. The cuneiform is the oldest written record. Sumerian cuneiform language talks of intelligent, hairy people. It's in the oldest language ever recorded, and I don't know if people realize the cuneiform language and the origins of language and stuff is thousands of years before the Bible was written. That's a thing. I think some people don't really understand that, like the pyramids were ancient to the guys that were writing in the biblical times. Those things were already a couple thousand years old. That's how old the pyramids are. You have to really look and research the timelines and kind of put, okay, here's the Christian time. Here's where that was written. Was anything written before that? Hell yeah, there was. We've been here a long time. I just read something in this week of a ancient obsidian axe factory. I guess they call it an axe factory because there's hundreds of obsidian axes made. Like there was a style to them, there was a form to them. They had been remade in a layer of sediment 1.2 million years old. Just found this week. So that changes the narrative a little bit of how long people have been here. And if you get into like Graham Hancock and some of these other guys, that there was people here. It could be meteor crashes or stuff that has wiped out civilization, wiped out the written record. We could be 2 million years old and just that they got hit. And when you dive into that and you see the devastation and a lot of where it's moving now is America was hit and probably wiped off whatever civilization was there off the face of the dirt, like gone. I mean, you could literally have a city like New York, 1 million years ago, get hit by a meteor and it's gone. Like there's no remnant of it, and there's signs of that. And the entire narrative that Christopher Columbus discovered America. I mean, if that's a Western narrative, do people realize that there was, I think it was almost 700,000 earthworks and mounds that were in the Americas that were so old that what we call the natives, the Sioux, the Cherokee, that was thousands of years before them. Some of these earthworks are older than the pyramids. There was a very advanced civilization here that got wiped off the planet somehow. And the remnant was here. Then what we call the woodland Indians and stuff like that came back through. That was ancient to them. And the Serpent Mound, that's here in Ohio. I don't know if you guys have ever seen or anything, but if you just listen to the narrative and you listen to like the Historical Society, you're going to learn nothing. You're going to learn nothing about the Serpent Mound. But there's people out there, Ross Hamilton, Thomas Johnson, and the Friends of the Mound. I encourage anybody to listen to those guys. They'll blow your mind. For one, the Serpent Mound is on the edge of a meteor crater, which does all kinds of crazy stuff with cars and electronics. And one of the theories at one time, there was a legend that the natives that came through here, all the birds were circling. It messed up their navigation, and it was like, wow, must be a sacred site. So he built the Serpent Mound, but the Serpent Mound gives you the summer equinox, winter equinox, summer solstice. Every bend of the Serpent Mound is like an astrological event that takes a very long time to learn where to place that exactly. And another thing what people don't realize is at the time that was built, just north of where the Serpent Mound was when it was built, was a sheet of ice a mile tall from that time period. That was the end of the world to them. They had got so far north, and then there's this giant mile high sheet of ice. And that was like as far, you can go no further. But that was such an advanced culture that they knew. So who knows? I know that's getting off on a tangent, but I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we don't know. We don't know everything that we think we know.
Kane.
That's awesome.
We were talking about Bigfoot. Where I have no idea. I'm just out here in left field now. Serpent mounds and mile-high pieces of ice. Bigfoot, Kane. Bigfoot. You're going to start talking about the Mandela effect now, aren't you?
No,
Talk
no.
about whatever he wants to. You don't listen to Spencer. It don't matter. What he says. We will talk about anything you want to talk about. Spencer.
I'm talking.
I hate you so much. Yeah, that's all right. Wait till next Sunday.
Did you say serpent mound, like serpent, like a snake?
Yeah, it's built like a snake. It's just north of Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's part of the mound culture. And the mound culture is so ancient in the Americas that they don't even have names for who these people were. So you might hear things thrown out like the Adena culture. The Adena culture is associated with these mounds and earthworks. The name Adena is from a farmer. It was his land that was in Chillicothe. So they're a whole race of people that they call Adena that never called themselves the Adena. And there's several examples of that. The Hopewell Indians, everybody's heard of Hopewell. That's named after a guy. These are so old that we don't know what to call them. And it's extremely frustrating. And I happen to live where I live here is part of the mound culture. And it's fascinating because if you get into it enough, you can start tying into giants and some other things that have been covered up in history, which I do believe is very important to the subject of Sasquatch. And just north of me in Lancaster, Ohio, they have a place called Rising Park. Had a stone monument on it, and like I guess you'd call it like a phallic stone, but they marked the site. So you go from Rising Park in Lancaster to Tarleton Cross, which is just this way. I know you don't know where that is, but close to me, all the way down to the Serpent Mound. They use mica mirrors, and by using the sun by line of sight all the way from Lancaster, Ohio to Cincinnati was a mound culture, and they had stone monuments. And you'll hear, I think you've even been to a place called Standing Stone. Guess what? Standing Stone is also a name for one of the places here that we call Rising Park, was actually called Standing Stone because the ancients had these stone monuments there. And how does that tie into Bigfoot? Well, if you take, I think it was the accounts of the Anunnaki and some of the personal accounts of meeting these people. These were giant people. It's not out of the realm or even fantasy. These are facts. The leftover from the mound builder culture were big people. They were buried in those mounds. Some of the people that I know very well, that's what they told, like, oh, the mounds, so where the giants were buried. That is leftover from a culture that's where the bones were found. And somewhere in the late 1800s, the very late 1800s, something changed with the narrative. Back then, people were discovering these mounds. People were looking at these bones. There was actual real documentation happening, and that all went away. Hit 1900s, and it was like, nope, this doesn't fit the narrative. We're going to hide this. And it's a tragedy. It's tragic. Even right now, the Historical Society, I believe, has 700,000 bones that if they came up with a law that if there was any Native American tribe that would claim these bones, they have to give them back. Well, the problem is they're so old that the Native American tribes don't even know who these people were, and they're burying 700,000 bones in an unmarked area, and that's a tragedy. That's stuff that people ought to be able to research and look and see how big these things, because they weren't all huge, but I'm sure there's a lot of evidence that's getting buried in a ditch somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
that we'll never have access or never know where it's at. And that kind of stuff pisses me off. And just rewriting the narrative, and it would, the way it ties into the subject of Bigfoot is if it was proven before that there was a very large race of people in the Americas, then it wouldn't be such a stretch to realize that there might be a large race of hairy people out there too, which who knows could be the one and the same, or at least a genetic offshoot.
If you're talking about, I mean, if we go down the rabbit hole a little bit, if you're talking about what we consider to be Sasquatch, boogers, if it is possible, probable that they are an ancient race of humanoid type creatures, they're in some way, shape, or form, they are a type of civilization people, not just a dumb animal running through the woods, which I don't think that they are anyway. But if they've been around for that long, they have become so adept at their just the way that they comport themselves and their day-to-day activities and everything. If they wanted to avoid us, it would be very simple for them to avoid us. It stands to reason that they would have learned a lot of tricks and techniques for avoiding us. I also tend to think that, maybe just by being so in touch with, the natural world where we are not, that maybe it is them to do things that we would consider, crazy or magic or woo or whatnot, because, I mean, who knows? It's possible. But if they're an older species, civilization, whatever you want to call them, type of person, if they are an older thing that's been around for thousands of years, do you see, in all of your research, do you see stuff that is similar to, like, possibly tool making? Do you see stuff that is similar to navigational type things that they have set up, like possibly with the structure and everything? Do you see stuff that would indicate, like, travel patterns where it's them specifically going, like, somewhere in the winter when it gets cold, they go to an area that is more advantageous to them? Do you see things like this that makes you think that it actually was, that they are a type of civilization of people that they comport themselves with techniques and everything that they have learned for hundreds of years of being out there in the woods? What do you see that makes you think that they're a type of people?
Well, first I'd like to pose this. So let's just throw this out there. If you take every species, animal, everything you can think of, birds, mammals, fish, everything, and you just look at the big picture, every animal on this planet is designed to live here without anything, without clothes, they're designed to live here without any help. Birds, squirrels, everything out there has a designed to survive better than humans. To me, when I look at that, I look at Sasquatch like, here is a species that is designed to live here. So what is really the true question? Are they the strange ones, or are we? Should we be looking at us? Because we are not designed to live here in our own environment. Everything else on the planet is. They are not. So are we the implant? Are we the implant? Is that the sign, the smoking gun of creation? I can go anywhere with that. There's something special about us. There's nothing special about everything else out there because it's designed, doesn't have to do anything. It just has to be born. It has a natural instinct and natural abilities to live in this environment, but we don't. So,
one time, we didn't have, like you said once before in one of your videos, we didn't have grocery stores. We didn't have, phones. You had to go out, you foraged, you hunted, you done whatever, and you survived. But people's forgot all that because everything's so easy for them anymore.
Yeah, we've lost that instinct out of us. And to get further into your question, as far as what do I see? Yeah, I see all the above. You're talking about if we're just going to look at what you find, you don't find, at least as of yet, we don't find homes. We don't find any permanent structures, even though they could be there. It's just, who knows? It could be underground or whatever. But we do find, when I look in the woods, I look at it like highways. And what do you see along the highways? You see signs, welcome to Indiana, whatever. There might be a sign for that. That could be equate to this is the tribe that is in this area. This is our area. You have boundary. You have information passed on. And to me, that's what I see. When I say signs of humanity, it looks like things had to have hands that made it, and they're relaying information. And if there is a language that I think a lot of us are leaning, they probably do have some kind of language. There's a secondary language, which is what we would call wood talk. And the wood talk is like us writing on a piece of paper, but out there they don't have a piece of paper to write on, so they use sticks to relay information. And the Hollywood sign. I mean, there's literally places you could go if you know what you're looking at. You're like, all right, that's pretty. It's so blatant. It's so in your face that you don't see it. But to a Sasquatch walking through the area, they see it. They see all those signs of their presence. It's in our face. But like Misty was saying, we're so far removed from the woods, we don't know that anymore. And I believe that's why, the ancients, they knew, like they had haunted areas. They talked about it. They have 300 different names for Sasquatch. Certain areas they would stay out of. Maybe they were looking at a teepee structure. Maybe a chief is walking along with his boy, sees a teepee structure, is like, they knew at that time what that meant. Like, okay, we go no further. That's their area. And it just so happens that there are names, Sitko, translated. There's night people. They call them the night people. The Chinodo are night people. And then you've got stick Indians. Why would they call them stick Indians?
Yeah.
Unless they were using sticks as part of their language. It's like writing for us. I think if you look into this, you will see that their signs of their presence are all through the areas that they inhabit. But that doesn't mean that's all the woods. That's a very small portion of the woods. And to be honest with you, I cannot even tell you that Sasquatch are making these. I cannot sit here and say Sasquatch make these structures. What I can say is they're real. I can prove it. I can prove it that you can take all the coincidence out of it. And I also know what it takes to do it. If someone wants to do this, what you have to do is you have to take an area. Mine right now is 4 counties currently. It takes years. You got to go through there and you got to document every bit, everything about every little thing you find. You throw some of it out, and then you'll be amazed if you build up enough documentation in this area and you start looking at it on paper, elevations, and start circling all the things. And then you start looking like, oh, wow, this structure is the same as this structure. And maybe it was third in a row from these other structures. Some of these things, you see one structure, and if you're in this long enough, you know what you're going to find on the next one.
Right.
And to me, right there, that can't be random. And that's been repeated, I'm telling you right now, in about 7 different states easily. I've got documented. That's the kind of stuff. Some of the elevation stuff. It's not even up for to question anymore. There's something to these. Whether or not Sasquatch are doing it, I don't know. But it's very provable that it can't be random. I mean, you can't go state to state and get the exact information. You know, that's you can't.
Speaking of, oh no, hold on.
Could be a good segue for some of the pictures.
That's exactly what I was looking for, but I do know.
Well, it's just like if you was say you're out mushroom hunting or foraging or doing whatever. If it's something that you've never done, yeah, you may see a random mushroom here and there that may catch your eye, but once you start doing that and that's something that you're out looking for, it's like your eyes automatically just draw to it, and you notice stuff so much easier than somebody who may not get out and look for stuff like that. You know, maybe occasionally just getting out walking in the woods, talking, just like Mark and him said, you're not going to pay as much attention as somebody that gets out every day and they know they're looking for certain things.
Yeah. Something there right there, that the pictures that you're seeing that you started.
Yeah.
Those aren't the same woods.
Yeah.
That's not the same tree. That's 2-3 hours apart. You know, just with those two pictures right there. And when I tell you that I have exact and different areas and stuff of this exact structure, I'm going to call this a structure, that means something to me when I see it. And it's not only that, it's what else is around it, what's next. And that's the kind of stuff where we keep pretty close to our chest, because if you give that information out, people can start hoaxing it, and that makes it I feel the same way about the people using calls. It's kind of ruined it. You get 1 million people out in the woods now doing calls. I think calls worked wonderful at one time, but I think they're, for research, you can't hardly use it anymore because they're smart. You know, this X structure right here actually changed. A couple of years later, we went back and it was a completely different structure. And that the way you do that is you take a picture and you get the GPS information off that picture, so you can come back 2 years later and it'll follow your phone to that exact tree, and lo and behold, it's been taken down and there is a new structure there because the information has changed. And you can equate that to like spring cleaning, maybe. Something about that area is now changed, and so there's a different structure or a different sign has been put up to give new information to that area. If that makes sense.
Spring cleaning, huh?
I do believe. Now that one right there, I found that the day after it was made, along with 18 other structures total, the day after they were made. I don't know what use this is. It's definitely not a shelter.
No.
But this is where I found food, and you hinted at tool making. So along with this structure, I found it was chicken of the woods mushroom, and it was used with Christmas fern. Made a bowl out of Christmas fern, basically a rough bowl, and had a bunch of chicken of the woods. Old. This was actually, I found this in the winter. Wow. But it was tucked beside a tree, just out of camera frame there. And it was just laying there beside a tree, but I was able to track it, and I found these little pieces of the mushroom, and I tracked it down the ravine, and lo and behold, there's the tree that the chicken of the woods had been growing on. And on that tree was literally a stick that it had used to scrape off the mushrooms down to the base of the tree, still laying there. I got a picture of this. It's the stick, and I mean, if in a very basic sense, that's tool making right there. Right. Proven. That's tool making. It was odd to me that it was not something I would eat at that time. It's pretty old mushrooms, but it was in the dead of winter too. made me wonder if things were struggling to eat, and just any kind, or maybe there was some other kind of nutrient that we're unaware of, or a medicine. But in that section of woods right there, that's 65 acres there, there was only 3 trees that grew chicken of the woods on them, and one of them was actually on my property. And this was not too far away from my, but out of that whole area, there was only 3 trees that had that. So that kind of also gave me some insight as why they were on my property. It could have had everything to do with getting those mushrooms, off that tree during season. So
That's a good picture.
yeah, I'll tell you this too. So a little more information on that is I studied this. I almost 3 years. During this particular time of my life, I was in the woods every single day for it was almost 3 years. You have the occasional day off here and there, but a lot of these structures were built in one day and not changed. It's almost like they were there for one day. I ended up taking this one down. That was kind of the time during the rock throw video, and it was so out of place. It already, at that point, was already a year old, and I was trying not to bring any attention to the area any more than what it was. People were starting to put up trail cams and stuff, and I did it almost as a protection to them. But I took it down. So I knew I had all the information I needed, but I also knew that nothing had went back to that in 3 years. So I could,
how you were talking about, you found. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and documented, I know the day, I know the night that happened, and was studying. So it took a year to find this area and to study it. And then this happened, watched it for another year, had the night. I mean, it was 2 nights over this time period. There was only 2 nights the structures came up, 18 of them. It was one on one night, one on next. It was in the winter, and then nothing. Everything else that I would find was more what I would call daily information. It was like things were still happening, but nothing like this. And I knew the areas that it was going to happen. I was planning on being out there in the woods every night, the anniversary of this, to see if there was something more to this. And it got screwed up by someone putting trail cams right very close to this area. And it completely, everything in this area stopped. And it took me another 3 or 4 months, but I found what they did was they just moved, this little special spot. I mean, this where this is at, I'm talking 18 structures within an acre of this exact structure you're looking at.
That close.
That close. And so something special about that. And one thing I didn't divulge at the time, the place I lived in at the time was actually facing the woods. And the back of my house was glass, and I could sit out there and I couldn't exactly see. It was a little farther in the woods for me to see, but I could look out in the woods at night. I'd never once seen a light out there at night. No one once seen a person out in the woods. And it was a guy with this little girl on the other side of the creek. All the years that I was in this section of woods, never seen one person out there. And this just popped up. There was no trash, no lighters, nothing had been cut. It was pretty incredible. I mean, it was one of my favorite structures I ever found.
Let me ask you something. Where you had talked about earlier that they are self-aware enough, possibly, and smart enough, intelligent enough to know to travel on a game trail in the wintertime to minimize their exposure, because deer are going to come behind them and obliterate, their tracks and everything and hide that. how do you go from a mindset of an animal is that, or a being is that self-aware and intentionally going out of its way to hide signs of it being there, to producing 18 of those things within a 1 acre area? Because that's kind of in your face. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's something very special is happening there. I don't know. I mean, I wish that I had more time to have studied it. It could have been a mating ritual. It could have been, I mean, who knows? But there was something special about this area. And I think there's something special about this particular, that you don't find this particular structure very often.
Right.
If you've seen some side pictures and stuff, it's unique. The fact that I had food, I mean, that's the first time I ever could document actual food source. Two different, I mean, Christmas fern's edible for one. Obviously, chicken in the woods is edible as well. And the way it was presented, I mean, who knows what was going on there? Because it's obviously there's a lot that I don't know if I put it in the pictures, but there's a lot better shelter that did have some activity in it. But this, to me, just the fact that it never came back, that's something in those woods that if you looked far enough and you researched enough, and you could find this exact same structure in certain areas of the woods. And then what I would suggest is you find them all, and then you Google and do a aerial view of that area and see what kind of information that gives you. To me, this is almost like a territorial. That could be the sign of the clan. Okay, their area. But this is only a specific area. It's a big area. And that's what I mean. This stuff takes years. You just don't find this. It doesn't hold any information for you unless you're willing to go through and find them all. Because I guarantee you, if you do it and you're willing to put in the time and the years it takes to do it to find them, you can find a lot of these exactly the same. And then you take all that data and then you look at it and see what is it saying to you now. To me, that's why I'm saying it really seemed like it was that was a territorial, and that was specifically maybe the signature. I mean, that's just me guessing. I'm not saying this I know. I'm just saying that's where I went with it after finding probably 8 or 9 of these. And I probably didn't find them all, but I can tell you that's hiking every day for 3 years straight. If you really want to get the big picture, of some of this stuff.
Now, hold on, couple questions on that. So, number one, are you saying that you found a pretty much exact match over and over again?
Different areas, yes.
Yeah.
Not only that, there might be another example here.
I think
I got not only that exact structure, I've got somewhere I have a picture of 3 of them. One of them twice the size of that, one that size, and one maybe 3 foot tall. That to me spoke to me as imprinting teaching.
Right.
You got this little one, even like what a kid would do, and it was roughly exactly though. And then you got one that's really big, and it was really old. It was part of the old forest. Again, if we want to talk about, there was an Indian mound. There had been people in this woods for 10,000 years by the evidence that was presented, that was brought out of the Indian mound that they found. So this is a very ancient woods that's had people in it for 10,000 years. And that's why I always kind of go back between the mound and the other stuff, because a lot of this stuff is in the same, even where I live now. I mean, I live in the heart of mound country. Is there any correlation with that? It very well could be. But again, when I use the chief walking through the woods back in ancient days, looking at his son. Maybe he's seeing this. Maybe he walks up on this sign and he knew what the hell that meant. Stay out, whatever you want to call it. He knew. Back then they had that knowledge because they lived closer to the earth. And to me, it's almost like they're still leaving these signs out here. We just forgot.
Right.
The modern man has forgot the knowledge of their forefathers, and that's why none of this makes sense anymore.
Oh, let me scoot to the next frame.
Okay, that's several different woods. This is just another way of showing you exact type things that you might look on the ground, but if you're not looking at them close enough, there is you can find these same things. These are no. I would have to go back and look at my notes. These might not even be in the same state, and you can find this repeated. Like I said, I have 10,000 pictures, and out of those, of everything, not just of this, obviously, but that's my data log is like 10,000, but I've got 100 examples of that exact scenario, probably of each type of thing that we're looking at least 100 pictures of each one in different states, different counties. And that's not really in itself telling you proof, but when you look at the rest of the data, it is.
Now, something I notice here, and I see a lot of people reference it on Facebook and other videos and everything. Realistically, when you're walking through the woods, there's a high probability of branches falling and just making an X laying on the ground. And I've talked to you about this before camping. You told me that you're not just seeing that, you're seeing other things around there that kind of lead you to think that this is actual manipulation. So you're not just walking up and seeing two sticks laying on top of each other on the ground and going, oh, Bigfoot did that, right?
Absolutely not. There has to be at least 4 other factors on anything that I'm ever going to put out there like this, whether it's an X structure or whatever it is. There's at least 4 that I'm going to find that I look at for every single thing. And those are the things that I kind of don't talk about a lot because I don't ever want it to get hoaxed. That to me, you could show me something and I could look around, and at least in my mind, I can tell you whether a person did it or not, because I'm looking for the other stuff that's around it or what should be after, or, just the database that we have. Certain things are, you know exactly what you're going to find the next go around, or how far you got to go or whatever. And when that stuff doesn't match up, I usually throw that stuff out. I mean, there's always other things there. Sometimes it's almost like there's something big to draw your attention to see that, but there's other things that are right in the same area that are there, and they're just there. And it's that's kind of how we do it. I look for those other factors, and if I don't have those, then you're not even gonna see me post about it. I mean, that's our standard.
Not only does he not post about it, he'll not tell you in private. They won't. But look at it. See the smile? But so you have found data that you have mapped out, and you have gotten to the point where you kind of know, hey, these things should correlate. These things should be together in a certain area, and that's what's making you go, okay, this isn't random. This actually means something, and you should be able to look over here and find a different something that goes along with you've documented doing this on maps and in different states and everything, and you've actually kind of developed a kind of a toolkit to rule in or out if this could be legitimate Bigfoot activity.
100%. Yeah, there has to be a criteria, and that's what we do. We, one thing in itself is you'll never see me just take a picture of it. That has to have a kind of fall into a certain criteria for it to hold water for me. And it's, so far it's been pretty bulletproof as far as, because you're right. A lot of the stuff that you're looking at could be natural as well. And sometimes I think that's manipulating nature. They manipulate things in nature, but the proof in the pudding is nature doesn't repeat itself.
Right.
Nature doesn't do a scenario of 3 different patterns and continue it for a mile, or 6 different patterns or whatever it is. That's not nature. That's something has to do that. And that's where the proof is in this.
Right now, everybody's going, tell us the other signs, King. Look at this. This blew my mind here.
Yeah. Yep. That's, I want to say it's Arkansas, but I could be wrong. It was one of our group camps. I know that where we saw this. I could be totally wrong without my notes where it's at, but that's another thing. I mean, we've got more than one picture of this. That's information. I absolutely have several examples of this. And the information it's giving you is the same. That's something, leaving information behind for somebody to see it, to say, oh, okay, this is what's coming up, I guess is the best way. But it's repeatable. And that's the part that sucks, is I could say, okay, here's exactly what's just beyond this. But then you're going to have some derelict out there that's going to hear this and is going to do it. And then it rules that, then you can never go back and know whether someone's truly finding this or someone's making it up.
This is why we can't have nice things. Some derelict out there is going to copy this. Don't be a jackass.
Okay,
Don't be a jackass.
I was just about to ask you about some stuff like this, so I'm glad you sent a picture of it. I wanted to ask you about the asterisks, and just if you've got like a lot of different kinds of symbols. Do you get mostly X's, triangles, asterisks? Some that's got a certain amount. Do you count them, and do you get a lot of the same numbers?
The asterisks are, I think, pretty rare. Obviously, I have several. I have 3 of these on my property. These here, I think, are rare. I can only go off of what I've seen, but I'm going through the course of all the hiking and stuff we've done. I don't find these as often. If you're asking me my personal opinion, this one asterisk taught me more about anything about the structures and stuff than anything I've ever did. And I believe it's a gift. This was left for me. You see this window behind me? This was left for me 100 yards up the hill behind me.
It's beautiful. I mean,
this was the one that, what I believe. So I was having a lot of interactions here with an individual at the time was able to track it and had a 9-inch print. So I believe that individual was a juvenile. And as we get going, I can show you. Well, this is a couple years ago, but I believe this is the same individual now. This is the juvenile that I have several casts crossing my property of part of the family group. But I believe this was. I mean, this one was a gift, and there was so much stuff that got placed around this stump, blew my mind. And the only thing I could really tell you on this is that it took me getting lost out in the woods and seeing this from a different perspective that opened up my world to this, because I just was not looking at it. I guess that's how you'd say, with my human perspective. And I was out later at night hiking, and I came back and I was lost as hell out in the woods. And I finally heard my pond. I could hear the frogs and stuff, and I was really disoriented. And I came across the crest, and I looked down, and I seen it, and it was like, shit, that's in my face. And from that led me to where I found the other three of these asterisks. That's what you want to call them. The only thing I would say is pay attention to every stick and the size of every stick. I would say the prominent, if there's a very prominent.
So does the structure on top of the stump, does the asterisk itself, whenever it's done like this? Now, I've seen asterisks on the ground or standing up, freestanding, but I haven't seen them on a stump. I've never found them on a stump. Does the asterisk mean something to you, or is the asterisk marking the location, the stump and that location means something, or is there actual information in that asterisk?
It means something to me for sure. And like I said, was the more you can't look at this in the way humans would look at it. You got to kind of get out of that box. But every little stick that it's using, it put that stick there for a reason, to try to convey something to you. And as you start looking at, if one's really long, that means if it's way longer than the other one, that might mean it might be more important than one of the little ones. And I can tell you this, one of the things I would do when I would start trying to emulate. At first, what I would do, I try to make my own little structure beside it and knock it down every time. It was teaching. I in my mind, I was like, no. But once I started trying to emulate that, is when I started getting more information. Now, the way I take that is, if you don't get it, it's lost. It's kind of like you're on your own. Like, you could give a damn whether you learn it or not. It's there. And if you do learn, it's almost to me like a puzzle. I with all my heart. That was a gift that was showing me something. And it took me a long time. And when I finally figured that out, I had another gift waiting for me. And that's kind of no. But, currently where I'm at right now, there's some stuff out there that I've got. I couldn't tell you what it means or what to do with it. It's just kind of a thing that when you collect enough information, it might dawn on you. It may never. And this might be where the learning stops.
Right.
And another very interesting, I've mentioned Richard a few times. One of the things he told me about that is you're only going to get interactions like this with a young juvenile. And then once they hit a certain age, breeding age, they go out on their own. And this kind of stuff is like, you're not going to have an alpha male doing this. He's got too much important stuff to do, but maybe you might be able to get an interaction from a juvenile who has more time on his hands. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm not saying it's not, but I definitely took that bit of information and put it in my pocket just to think about. It makes some sense to me. This is just, I don't know if it looks really creepy because it's at night. Let's just go here. People want to think that they know so much about these structures. Okay. How much have they actually looked into it? one, has it ever even dawned on 99% of them that some of these structures should be viewed at night? Has anyone ever thought about that? You talk about this nocturnal animal, this nocturnal thing that mainly see at night. How do you know that this isn't supposed to be seen at night versus our human brain? Oh, it must be water over here or whatever. I'll tell you what, I moved into my property. I have 3 springs on my property I found in freaking first 3 months I lived here. I don't need anyone to tell me where the water is. This is more than that. So
that's my big thing. That's what I can't understand. If the structures are simply pointing out, hey, a person lives over there, or hey, there's water this way, why would they need to put those out there? Because if you exist in that environment, I mean, you know, I hear people talk about stuff like, you know, maybe they're putting it out there for the youngins, for the kids to learn. I'm not sure I think that, but I think there's more to it. There's more info in these things for sure.
Yeah,
I think.
I tend to agree with you. I think that's just a creepy one to me to this day. I've got several examples of this one too. Again,
that's a Blair Witch thing.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's why I throw that out there, because I like to watch people's reactions when I say, you know, how do you know they're not supposed to be viewed at night? Because 99% of the time you see in the people's face, they never even crossed their mind. Never even, I mean, wouldn't that be like one of the first things you would think about? That maybe now I will save you some time, because people, you know, people say they're lining them up with the stars, they're lining them up with this and that. Well, let me tell you something. I've looked into that. And one thing I can tell you is the stars move across the night sky. Be very hard to make that alignment like what a lot of people are thinking. Now, here's a good example. This is my area. This is a topo of kind of the area I live in. We're actually right there where the red dot is. Now, going back to, you say certain areas. Well, I can tell you right here, just, you know, I'm not a big topo guy, but there's things someone like Eric would look at that and look at this topo map and point right to an area that he sees familiar to him, that because you've done your research, you've had other encounters in certain types of geographic locations, and you might want to go to one of those areas and check it out because you've had luck there before. And a lot of times, if there's something in that area, might bear fruit. And that's the importance of topo maps.
So something about that red line there. Something about that red line is a familiar area.
Well, the red line on there now, I don't know if you remember this, but we were having a discussion where I was going to have a couple of us here on the property, and we were going to set up and go stealth. And that red line up there was basically where we were going to be. We weren't going to be on that red line. We were going to be in specific areas where we could see, you know, be far enough away, go total stealth mode during the day, no light, no nothing, 3 different groups, and try to catch something going through. And that's part of what I sent you guys a long time ago when we were talking about trying to do something like that.
And we still should.
We still should.
Okay.
There you go.
There
you go. This here is how I do my research. Okay, so along what you're seeing there is a radius, and then from the radius is an epicenter, and my property is actually it within this radius, and this is part of why things make sense. Now, there's a lot of stuff you see. This is a very older version. The one I have now, I would say 3/4 of it has the pin marks, and that's can't really see it, but there's 3 counties on this one right here, and about a 20-mile radius is what I would call the epicenter, and that's what tracking will do for you. But you know what that means? In that area right there, you gotta walk every inch of that area to find what's in it, to get a pin, to put something that's interesting in that area, and then print whatever you find, and you over years you make yourself a map. And what was so cool about this one in particular is I had 3/4 of this map right here mapped out, and then during that time they had the Stoutsville Bigfoot sighting. And what's crazy about this is I'm looking like if the way you guys are looking at the map at the top left-hand corner, straight from that last pin, I mean straight from it, off to the left of the page was the Stoutsville Bigfoot sighting. So that's what good research will do to you, because the BFRO actually did a great they did a great investigation of the information that they had that was in the middle of the cornfield. So they kind of took the eyewitness account, they wrote it down, had pictures of where it happened. It's like, well, that's all we got. Meanwhile, you got a guy like me over here that has a 3-year history of tracks and trackways that coincide exactly where that sighting was, to where this is probably who they saw, because this is probably the same individual that crosses my property. And that's what good research will do for you. So that's why that's significant. But that's how I do my research.
So there's a method. You think there's a method, a pathway that they follow, a predictability to a degree of a pathway that they follow?
Yeah, that's like what we have found is very, very much counterclockwise. The trackways are usually counterclockwise. They don't really deviate much from point A to point B, and then they almost get into an area where they're more comfortable. But until they get into that area, it's almost a straight line. And what I did here, just so you know, it's not a perfect radius by any means, but a way to find an epicenter is you take all of that. Like imagine that same picture with 3/4 of the pins around it, various, but then you can kind of find what's the center of that circle. And that's kind of why I'm like, okay, my research area here is a 20-mile radius. Now the Stoutsville Bigfoot sighting threw that off a little bit. I actually have to widen my radius a little bit because it was outside of this circle. But I believe it's the same one. I believe it actually deviated from here, probably went barn raiding or whatever it did, and got sighted, because this area right here is almost all under tree cover. So that's what I was basing some of this off of, was you could do this whole 20 miles and be under cover of trees, every bit of it. But it chose to go out through some farm fields, but could have easily got back onto the path. And even if you look at the top, how it goes around, then it dips down. The reason it dips down, there's a farmhouse. So it goes back in the woods a little deeper with people there, kind of goes back around. So even there's so much information there about where they're at and why they're deviating a little bit deeper in the woods or around something. It's usually around people.
All I'm saying is, to anybody that ends up watching this, if you have this information, or if you know somebody that's going to this length to plot this kind of data, send them to me. I want to talk to them. Not Kane. Don't send them to Kane. He already knows all this stuff. I'm trying to figure out what Kane's doing, so let me talk to him.
Well, it's really just, I mean, you have to have a passion for it. It's not something you can do. I mean, this is something that's going to take years. It's going to take years. And that's all there is to it. If you really want to track and get into tracking, you better be in it. I'm going 10 years in, and I can tell you everything I know, and it probably isn't going to get you. Isn't going to. I mean, it helps. It helps to get you in some good areas, but it doesn't mean you're going to see one either. It seems like the attributes these things have, they're so fast that they could easily out strategize us. Even if you got them dead right, there's the concept that these are slow, lumbering, patty looking things is not what I saw.
Right.
Is not what I saw.
What is this? Is this a booger?
Well, go back to the first one.
All right.
We've got to start there. All right. That's probably a better, the other picture blew it up a little bit. So one of the things I'm trying to show there is
Dog man.
This is two different states, and the Hocking and Galena are 2 hours from each other. The one that says Galena, Ohio, that was from a tree knock video. That's a still from a video that I recorded the tree knock on, and then going back frame by frame, there's this individual in the frame. And if you go back, that's one thing that's hard about my site is it's in upwards of 400 and some videos. So some of the stuff you have to go back and find. But once I found that tree, okay, I had several videos locating that exact tree, before and after pictures, showing that there was nothing there where the angle of that tree sticks out. I got plenty of pictures that you can see that, there was something there. And then I even marked the place where I had the sighting and made a trajectory and tried to figure out the height of it by placing a bandana at my height, going back and trying to figure out some kind of idea how big this thing was. And it just really matters how close it was to a tree. It could be 6 foot something, or it could be 7 foot, depending if it's further away from the tree. If
Right.
your line of sight's like this, the further you get away, the bigger it's going to be. But I just wanted to show you, that's, if you want to start to get into, a little bit of the paranormal, that looks very much like the one in Mississippi there, and the one in Tennessee looks like the same damn thing. And I can tell you, when the one in Mississippi was just a selfie at night and had no idea anything was there wasn't a Sasquatch touching you. If you look right here on my shoulder, it's almost like something's got its hand on my shoulder. And then unexplainable. But then when you kind of look at the Tennessee picture and you can compare it. Now the Tennessee picture was that was one where we did the cowboy camp, and I seen this thing with my night vision, and I'm looking at a face. And as soon as I go to take a picture of it, zaps, my camera dies completely. Get back home. I'm like, I tell the guys, I think I got something. I'm not sure. I had a face in there. Get back home. Every file, every picture from that weekend is fine. One corrupt file, and it was that one. Out of everything, one corrupt file so I went and I researched. I found a way to uncorrupt the file, and that's what was on it. And again, if you go back to my site, you can see where I took several pictures and was able to line up where that was with the trees that are behind it and get a frame, a height reference, and how big this thing was with me and other pictures, like beside a tree, how much bigger its head would have been than mine. So that's the kind of stuff that I try to do, is even though that night I thought I had something, the next day with my camera, I took 30, 40 pictures of that area in the hopes that I'd be able to line something up. And then the big one right there, that's the one from my time-lapse camera from this year in my backyard. And it's just, to me, one is, I don't know if we have other pictures of it or not, but something happened there that very strange, very, very strange incident happened. And that was in the backyard, and it was pretty much blocking the view of the door that you can see in other cameras. That's the same one. It looks very similar. It's kind of blown up too much on the screen, at least what I'm looking at, but that's just the same one. Just kind of a compare. It's kind of eerie that it's, I mean, when I look at something like that, I'm like, what are we dealing with? Because that obviously wasn't a living thing that was that close to me, and I didn't notice it. But I mean, it's one of the weird ones, and I've got a lot of weird ones. So, but I don't know. But again, there's pictures. So that's showing you the family group casted from last year that's crossing my property. So you can see you can kind of see the size. Now this is Richard's, the huge one. That was Richard's cast. So I put it in the picture because I do have that size print on my property that I just found last year, that I hope to get my own cast of it, but just kind of show you the size. That's almost a 24-inch print, I think it was. And if you have you guys ever heard of the 6.6 times 1 method for finding height ratios? That big one, if you use that ratio to that size print, it would put him about 13 foot 2 inches tall with human ratios. Now, the thing that's interesting about that is the sighting that the guys had from my deck this year. That one video that went viral was about these guys had a sighting, and both agreed about where its head was when it goes across the driveway. So they marked it, and it was well over 12 feet. He's 6 foot something. He's on a ladder, and he's up there trying to tie this rope off. And he's on a 6 foot ladder. He's 6'4" or something, trying to get it to where they thought its head was. Well, that correlates very close to that ratio, 6.6 times 1. And then the next larger one is the one I'm going to equate to. I mean, I don't know this, but I'm going to say this is mom. A lot of stuff you can figure out from this stuff, especially now that I've had a year to think about all the action of last summer. But that one, let's just call that one mom for argument's sake. That's the one that is always closest to the cabin. So the large alpha male, I've only got him on my property down by my pond, and the furthest away you can get from my property, I've found those 24-inch prints. So it's rare that he's that close to the cabin. Mom, we're going to call, is the one that I always cast, the one by the carport all the time. And I think that's because when I'm telling you, like when they're going through a property, someone's, looking first before they cross. Someone's a lookout. So they could go through there, and unbeknownst to me, especially at the time, something go through the dark part of my woods and see me either at first if I'm on the deck, and then as it gets closer to the carport, it could look right kind of at an angle, but they can look through the windows and see, just make sure the coast is clear, probably give a sign or a sound, and then move for the property. And then we'll just say Junior is the smallest one that goes through. He's usually further away, crosses the property a little further away, in between mom and dad, if you want to think of it that way. Dad's on the far outside, mom's closest to the house, and Junior's going through the middle. But then for some reason, it seems like Junior likes to sneak around, and Junior seems to be like the one that leaves me the stuff, because that's where I find the prints. I've found structures with his print, which has grown now. Some of the stuff, Spencer, I've sent you, that we've had that was Junior. That was the smallest of well, not the smallest, but the juvenile print. And what's really fascinating about these is now I'm hoping with the information, Eric's kind of been looking at this too, and realized, these things are crossing between like 7 and 11 o'clock at night. And then if you look at all the times that every time I had something happen that I'm aware of, you can say April, it's slowly, and then by August, that's the peak, man. August is the peak, and then everything kind of slows down from there as you get into September and down. But now I'm looking at, okay, now I've got 3 to 4, not just crossing routes, but prints. And this isn't just like one. This happened a bunch last summer, especially in August. It was very hard to even keep up with everything. And I guarantee you, I have stuff that I never got around to posting at that time that was very interesting, that I probably did a video of it and never even got around to posting it because it's just trying to keep up. And then you can see the handprint. I'm trying to see it back here. It's partial handprint that you can see on the floor, but if you look at it, let's see which way. There you go. The thumb. You can kind of see this part right here. I'm an amateur caster. I didn't fill in enough, but it's a handprint that we got, and it was kind of into. And this would be just going by the documentation. This would be mom. This would be her print right here. And this would be her hand that would go along with that print, because that's where she comes through at. If I can get it on there. And using that ratio, mom would be about 9 foot tall if you use that same human ratio. And obviously, guys, I'm calling dad, mom, juvenile, just as a point of reference, so you know which one I'm talking about. But it makes sense to me. And then, of course, this remains to be seen. But then I found the little tiny print this year too, which we don't know. It's up in the corner there, and it's up here somewhere in all my casts. But there's a little print that could have been a bear, or it could have been a juvenile. Normally I will downplay this stuff, especially when I'm doing a video. Like, I'm going to lean way more towards, like, when I present every reason why it should be a bear, even if my personal opinion doesn't really lean that way. It doesn't, because when I found that small little print, I also found mom in the 24-inch print, and they're all down by the pond that same time. And to me, that's just too much coincidence for me to sit there and just write it off. But in my mind, it's like, hopefully I'll get another print. There are bears in the area. Here's a crazy thing too, with the cameras and stuff. I've never gotten a bear on my camera, but I know they're here. I've casted their footprint, but I've never got a bear on camera. And never had. Occasionally now I will get bear prints down by the pond, and unless like you see bear tracks, I'm sure you know what they have, that waddle.
Yeah,
pretty easy if you just look past that one hind foot and you look a little bit farther. If it's a bear, it's pretty easy to know that what you're looking at is a bear.
Yeah, if you can track a bear, you can pretty much tell too if it's a double step print.
Exactly.
And speaking of the pond, also for the ones that maybe doesn't know or hadn't already seen it or heard it, can you tell about what happened with the flower pot in your pond? Because that's kind of odd, and it I don't see a bear or a raccoon, doing something like that, and that's.
Yeah, there was a giant, not giant, but very large X structure that appeared at my pond on the other side of the pond from where I live, on the other side, which in that area I've had a lot of activity. I've heard a lot of stuff, especially when I first moved in. I'd hear stuff over in that corner. I get up one day and there's a big X right there. I mean, you can't miss it. You can see it at the time you can see it from my deck. Very obvious. But one of the things that was strange was I hate litter. I can't stand it. I'm a conservationist in that idea. And I remember, I think it was probably off my deck, but one of those plastic flower containers had the dirt in it must have blown off my deck and made its way into the pond. And when I was down there, I remember looking and finding that it looks like a red bucket. It was in the water. And I just made a mental note, like, I need to get that out of the water. It looks trashy. And when I found that X, I looked over and that bucket was out of the water. It was about 4 feet off the side of the bank. It was out of the water, turned upside down on a stump. To me, it just that kind of blew my mind a little bit, that it was just one more thing on top of that. And since I've been here, there's been 6 structures of the X structures that have popped up since I've been here. And that's at Richard's house right there. That's a cast of what we believe to be a true alpha male. Is what you're really looking at is what an alpha male print. Now, I would have maybe balked at this a year ago until I started finding that size cast or that size print on my property. And it was just the areas that I found it in was just not good enough to get a cast that good. But that is my hope. One of my goals for next year is to try to document. And so Richard lives, as a crow flies, about 15 minutes from me. So it could very well be what we're interested in. If I can get a cast and see if we can compare and see if it's the same individual that he casted out by his property, if it's the same one.
Right.
So
if I saw that out in the woods, I don't know that it would even register that that's a track because it's so big.
Well, I'm telling you what, that is true. And part of the reason I was successful last year with finding so many casts being able to cast so many things on my property was with Richard's help. Richard, through his former line of work, was a real deal man tracker. He did for the United States, and that guy opened my eyes up to looking in areas I would have never thought, like down the driveway and the washout of my driveway. I've been here for several years and never even looked there. And once he pointed out some of these casts, the size, then it kind of sunk in, like I was not looking. Like, you can miss, they're so big, you can miss them. But what really sold me was finding this in a different area, crossing the furthest part of my property back in the woods, just in the moss, man. The impressions, you couldn't cast them, but I'm like, in the stride, like, this is real. Not only was it down by the pond, but now I found this on my own back in a part of the property that no one goes to except me, that would even know, like, if you want to talk about hoaxing or something like that, no chance. And that dude.
What size stride was it?
Oh, it's 5 foot something. It was giant. Like you literally. I do now. Again, I don't know if I posted the videos or not because it was um, so much was going on at that time. But I had videos of tracking it. I had videos of down there in like this crevice where I first found them and getting a tree knock. I think I posted that, but I don't know if I ever posted a video of me actually following that trackway through the woods. And I will tell you something else. So, and this is very telling to me. Um, as you come down my property, my driveway is probably 1/8 of a mile long. It's real long down through the woods. Down by the front, there's a blind turn. And as soon as you get around the blind turn, I got a big surveillance camera. Like as soon as you go around, you're on camera, bud. And what's crazy is where this thing came up, you can look at the tracks. He literally was on a course to walk directly in front of that camera, sidesteps around the camera and goes right around it. And I've got that on video. For whatever reason, that thing avoided, and it wasn't like he did much. You could see in his steps, came up to the top of the driveway, went straight in front of that where that surveillance camera was pointing, stepped right around it and went up the hill. That's I have that documented. It walked around that surveillance camera.
So
Crazy.
do you think they, how you think they know? Let's just ask. And by the way, people, game cameras do not constantly emit an IR beam. They have a PIR sensor in them. They can detect whenever something moves in front of them. It's a displacement of heat or whatnot. They activate the IR. But having said that, how do you think they know where the cameras are? Because you've told me about other times where you plug camera in and they avoid the area. You unplug the camera and then there might be some signs there. How do you think they know about the cameras?
I've looked into it a lot actually. I've tried and I'm not convinced. I mean, again, you go to my website. I spent a long time last year trying different things out with your trail cameras. One of the easiest things you can do is you can put in your trail camera and just look at it through your phone, through the lens of your phone. And it, in my mind, if I can see it through the lens of my phone, then it's not hidden good enough. Especially now, it's going to do it no matter what. It's going to, when it flashes at night, you know, your phone's going to pick it up, but your phone's going to see it even like when it's black IR and we looking at it and it snaps a picture. We don't see that, but you look through your phone, it still flashes in a different realm of spectrum of light. Maybe it's that, you know, maybe it's that. I don't know. Here's the thing. That thing walked right around. It wasn't like it was scared of it because it walked within a foot of it. Like, wasn't afraid to touch it. It just walked around that end of it. I have no idea why. I'm just telling you that's what I found, and it's extremely frustrating to the bad luck that you have with it, and like when you put out cameras, and you're absolutely right. Like there's times where I've changed my methods several times over the years. Now, any camera I have is really close to the cabin pointed out, or really close to the cabin, facing the cabin, hoping to catch a silhouette. Like if I can't get them facing the camera, I'm hoping to use my cabin lit up at night and capturing it with a time lapse that, as far as I can tell, on my camera is not emitting anything. It's just taking pictures every second and hoping one walks by and at least get the silhouette of them on the side of my cabin. That's good enough for me,
right?
You know, and that one freaky picture in the back is something to that nature from the time lapse camera that crossed. You know, I got that one still of it, and it's blocking out my door. You know, that's the thing. You can look at all the pictures, because what this thing does, it takes a picture every couple seconds, puts it in a video. You go back frame by frame, you can see my door of my cabin, my back door, and when this thing takes a picture of it, it blacks out. It blacks out the door behind it, so it's solid enough for that. But that's also where that strange incident happened with the video as well. And again, with that one, I don't know. People know what I'm talking about, but we might have one picture of it. We might get to it.
I think that there is, and that's a good technique. I think. I mean, I thought it was a good technique.
It's just thinking out of the box, trying everything you can.
Yeah,
that's the handprint.
Greg had a question. He wanted to know if you ever get creepy feelings and just know when they're around just by the way the feeling is.
Oh yeah, oh yes, I do. Something in the air. Well, your gut tells you. I don't know if that's a primal thing that we detect, and I say it a lot, right? Especially in the summer. I haven't been posting a lot because there's not really a lot to post right now, but that again further affirmation to me that it's normal here, man. In the winter, it's like nothing. Everything's calm, peaceful. There's no feelings, and then you hit that certain area, it gets, as I said, peaks in August, man. It gets really, really strange feelings out here. A lot of weird stuff happens, and the activity happens. And that's another thing that we're tracking right now. That's an area that Eric, Richard, Todd have been pulling these kind of. This is only half a print that you're looking at. We haven't been able to get the palm part of it yet, but there's a heel to this. But there's a 3-toed claws. This is a real animal out there that we don't know what it is, but it's real. I can tell you this much. Richard called us into this certain area to look at it, and these tracks were found. Actually, Eric found this one, and the only thing we knew to go by is Richard told us to look for holes in the ground. And so Eric found that, and we had no idea. When he casted it, he pulled out these claws, man. And not just, so we had a choice of getting several of these out of the ground. I have one, I think right here, a partial. But to give you some scale of the claws, there's a third claw that broke off of this one. But this is like Velociraptor type.
It's a dinosaur. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just another I have found on my property. This is late in the summer. Ended up finding one time some tracks like this crossing my property in same area where I don't know if one was following the Sasquatches or vice versa, but it was in the same trackway and the ridge there. So crazy. And I got some, they're buried up there, but I got several pictures of that and that particular cast. But that's another just sidebar, something strange that's out here that don't know what it is.
Something that we don't need to talk about. Look.
Yeah. No. I got another question about that. Don't even start. Hold on, Spencer.
Well, that's this one right here with all three. So it's almost 6 inches wide. And we've taken this through the gamut.
Is that a claw off the back?
It's really just a partial. It was just an artifact from the cast. There would actually be a palm to that if we could have got it.
Okay, see, that's what I was wondering, if it was more like a bird or more like a canine.
I hope it is. I hope it's an ostrich. I hope it's an ostrich.
One thing we looked at is we did look at eagle. Eagles can have giant claws. The problem with that is that the claw itself is not much bigger than my pinky finger at the actual claw. And these claws, it's not This is the same picture. This is before it got broken. This is the same claw you're looking at of whatever it is. I don't really care to find that either. I'm not interested. That thing's built
6 inches wide.
Yeah. That here, I wish I would have grabbed that. That's a tooth I found on my property up on a ridge. That tooth is, man, I've got it put away. It's a giant molar. I don't know what it is, but I thought it was really interesting. You can tell by the dot in there. That's where the root on the bottom of the molar, but it's a giant molar that I found. I don't know what it's to. It could, from what I've researched so far, it's not horse or cow or anything like that. It's either it could be a dinosaur artifact for all I know, but I don't think it is. I think it's still got enamel and stuff on it. So just another. I wish I would have actually.
Wonder if
this is a giant molar. Is what that is.
Wonder if it's possibly an elk. Looks big. Oh, all right. Here we go into. You want to do?
You know what? Yeah. I would use, like, going back from the beginning, when people, what evidence do you have? So, we kind of went through structures, all right? Some of the evidence along with that, which is not going to turn anybody's opinion. Then you've seen some of the pictures I've got so far. Still not going to turn anyone's opinion probably. Now this one here, so let's set the stage for this is in Galena, Ohio. Anybody can look it up in the map where I got this. This is the northern part of Ohio, just north of Columbus, Ohio, which Columbus is a metropolitan area. This is just as you get out into the sticks is where I live. There's never been a bear ever documented in that portion of Ohio. Down here, yes, okay. But this is a FLIR image. At the time, this is a FLIR Scout. If you know what a FLIR Scout is, this is a FLIR image. It's just a heat signature of something that I got. Not only just picture, but I got video of it walking through the woods, and maybe 4 or 5 shots. And this is the best FLIR image I have of this particular heat signature that I got. So if we move on to the next one. Maybe we'll see where we're at here.
I tried to do them in order.
Okay. That's just another one, another picture of the same FLIR image.
You can see the arm outline and stuff in that last picture.
Yes. Yeah. What was great about this one is it was very close to where I lived, and I was able to go back. Okay, so here, this is 3 photos overlapped, all right, overlaid. So what I was able to do, I was able to locate the tree that this was at. This is an actual picture of my backyard when I was filming out. This shows you the size of the FLIR image. It's lined up exactly with a different picture where it was standing with the tree line. Was able, even above this, you can see all the trees line up. Then I was able to go out there and I was able to put a dot where I'm at, which is roughly 5'7", 5'8" is my height. Put a dot and was able to go back there, take an image of me with my hands outstretched, shrink it down to where the top of my head was at the top of that dot to get an idea of how big this thing was. And as you can see, leaning over, it was in excess of 9 feet. So this is something that I like to use for people that, especially people that are skeptical and say, okay, well, explain this. This is in Ohio, northern Columbus, Ohio. And obviously the first thing they're going to say is bear. Then I'm going to say, okay, well, look up how tall a bear is. Because we don't have bears that stand 9 feet tall in Ohio. That's just not. And the size of this, if you look at my outstretched hands, is like 68 inches or something is probably the span of this thing's shoulders. And we all know bear have narrow shoulders. Their head, when they stand up, they don't have giant shoulders. And I think what this is doing right here is walking away. It's almost the typical Patty stance as it's looking back is really kind of the clear signature you're getting, because it was moving in that direction away from me when I finally got that good shot. And it's amazing that when you would think that more people would recognize, or you'd have people say, well, that, especially at the time, let me come to your property. Let us do an analysis on this. There was no interest. And if you think of the stories and stuff you hear that, or you watch online, people that supposed evidence got one picture. Okay. Everybody wants to flock to that. But when they've got a guy that has video, he's got a FLIR image, he can take you to the exact spot on the tree and let you stand there and film all this for yourself and then come up with your own conclusion. Nobody wants to touch it. And why is that? I mean, it's like you've given them everything they need to make an assessment of what it is. And again, I don't know what it was, but I'm telling you, it was in Galena, Ohio, and it was in excess of 9 foot tall. I got it moving, and there's a picture of it, and I could take you to the tree it was standing behind. And that's just another blow up of just to kind of show you the size of just a hillbilly comparison, basically, of how big this thing was. And obviously, it's not blowed up so much on the screen. You kind of lose some resolution there, but that's kind of what I try to do.
The video you did, the breakdown that you did of this on House of Enoch is a lot better. And all the more reason that everybody really needs to take the time and go back through some of this stuff. He just has some amazing information on there. And the story that goes along with that of how he filmed that at that house is very interesting as well. You really ought to go back and see the original video on House of Enoch. So this is that tree peaker.
Yeah, this was captured during a live video that I captured. And this was happening. It was happening like every, 10 minutes or something. So what I ended up doing was I turned away from it, and I had my camera like this, and I was just kind of standing there like this with my camera facing away from it, with my camera facing towards it, and I could look at my camera to kind of look at the area. And I captured another knock. And in the stills, there's actually a couple more of these, but this was what was behind this tree. There was a black figure, and people will say, well, it's blurry. Well, yeah, it's off an iPhone, which I stay pretty much up to date on. This is iPhone 12 at 120 yards or whatever it was. I mean, you're lucky to have anything, any kind of, but. The thing that I like to point out is you can look at the leg area. You can definitely see that this thing has moved, because you can see its legs just sticking out from the tree at the bottom. Then you look at the picture on the right, and it's not. And it's actually kind of in the middle of doing something like this. And I got some other pictures where its hand is on the other side of this tree that you can see its hand, and then you see the hand disappear.
And this thing came out like this when you turned your back to it. Did the knock come from a different direction? Like, you hear that typical thing about, sometimes they'll create a distraction to get you to look over here.
Yeah, at the time.
So that maybe something behind you can move. Do you find that to be true?
Yes, I do find that 100% to be a tactic that they use. This one here, I was just aware enough by this time that I heard that knock, and I think this was the third time, and it was kind of hard to place where it was at. I didn't want to just directly stop and stare at it. So after I heard the second one, that's when I turned my camera on and started just filming behind my head, basically. And then it finally did it again, and I was just fortunate as I was panning, it actually, you get, there's another picture and it's blurry as it's moving. It was moving really fast in behind this tree, and you get just a kind of a crappy picture of it. But you see it in motion, moving, and then kind of coming up around the tree like this to see what was going on. Again, it's not just for me. It's not. I try to not just have a picture. I have to, or a video. I try to put as much with it as you can. Like you can listen to the tree knock live, and then you can go back and you can look at the photo stills, and then if you're savvy enough, you can actually do what I did with the video and go back and find it yourself and see this thing peek around behind the tree.
What the hell is
that? This one here, this is where you need Misty. Yeah, you need Misty involved on starting to talk about some of this. This thing here is a trail cam image. And for a long time, really downplayed this one. It's been around for a long time. I just didn't ever bring it out and talk much about it. But for a long time, it was in. It's been part of the cover of House of Enoch and everything else, and just kind of had it there without talking. But I mean, what do you see in that picture? Do you see a face?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you have there is a side-by-side comparison of a trail cam and me in the same exact spot as that, and to take an after picture. And what I use, there's that little crook in the tree, so I could place my face as close as I could to the crook of that tree to really line it up almost perfectly. Now, if you're looking at that picture and you can pick out two eyes, you can pick out a bridge of a nose, and you can pick out a mouth. If you see that, I mean, you can straight line that. You can straight line that over to where my eyes line up. Its nose lines up to the bridge of my nose. Its mouth is here. If you were to draw a straight line across that, the bottom of my goatee is actually where its mouth is. So that's where proportionally it gets a little strange from the nose to where its mouth is way lower than where a human face is. But I always kind of avoided talking too much about this because this picture is actually slightly translucent. And that's why I don't have an answer for that. But what I see there, I think there's another one after this one, but there's, I see a face. And this,
oh, sorry.
You're fine.
Even my computer doesn't want to stay on the devil work.
Yeah.
I come in at the right time.
That's why I said you need to be part of this, but I didn't talk a lot about this one because it does appear to be a little bit translucent, but that's it is what it is.
I know. I'm sorry. I hate I missed any of it, but I got cold. I had to run and get a coat right quick.
You have to wonder, though, if they can do something. I truly believe from what I've seen and from what's going on now, because I'm working with a couple people looking into something, but I truly believe that they are doing something that affects electronics. I can't really explain it, but I see something there in the battery drainage and the just the messing with electronics in general. And if they do, I wonder if that picture is a face. It's just that they're disrupting it being a high quality resolution picture of the face. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, how would you test that? That's the thing. So
I know.
Let me throw something at you guys. This will get a little segue. And I don't know if you guys ever heard about this, because this is something that's going to become a reality that's been a myth for a long time. And now science is finally catching up to it. Have you ever heard of upper atmospheric fungi?
No.
Upper atmospheric life. So this is data coming in now. Now check this out. Basically above the stratosphere. So, that's ours. So above the stratosphere would be the upper stratosphere of the Earth. There's all the water, all the nutrients, everything that you could possibly need is already there. And they were already finding fungi and different types of fungi. And there's certain types of fungi that can almost be like upper atmospheric jellyfish that are evolved enough to have bioluminescence. So a lot of these UFO stuff you guys are seeing could actually be very natural, normal organisms living in the upper atmosphere that come down here occasionally and feed. And this is not just off. There's a lot of data going into this of some of the, even like the 411 missing people, some of the UFO sightings. There's ancient, or not ancient, but there's a lot talked about of people, cattle mutilations and stuff, and old times, talking these certain like death clouds and stuff. And that's almost like there's a video out there right now actually that's like a manta ray. Well, it's kind of like an elongated manta ray that has almost what a light is on it, but this is a living thing, and science is starting to get up to snuff on. So the lights in the woods, the UFOs, some of this stuff might completely turn out to be just normal stuff that we just haven't discovered yet, and it's been living in an area less discovered than the oceans, and it's perfect because you have mountain ranges. The air hits the mountain ranges, it pushes all the moisture and the nutrients up into the upper stratosphere where these things live, and occasionally they come down. They've got stories of these things dropping, I forget what, gar or something, gar parts, like they suck up an entire pond,
What?
digest it, floating over an old village and spitting up all the parts across the blood and guts and everything didn't use, and it's like a cloud form, but it's actually an organism. And that is just some of the crazy stuff that I think 10 years from now they're getting on board. Like, what the oldest organism in the world ever discovered was?
What's that?
It's a mushroom. There's a mushroom, and the mushroom was fully evolved before we were a primordial soup. That's how old the mushrooms were, fully evolved. Now that might not sound like much, but I think it's either like it's Bob, the biggest mushroom that they've discovered is like, I forget. I think I wrote down the how many acres it is. It's insane, but it's 2,384 acres, 4 miles square, a mushroom. This mushroom dictates what acreage and acres of woods lives and dies and kills off hundreds of acres at a time in advance, so it has food to feed on as the woods decay. They call them Bob. So again, here we are, just we have a very limited knowledge of what's all out there. And here's the picture we were talking about in the backyard. There's 3 pictures there. There's my cabin at night, and then this figure across the cabin. And then for a little bit of size, it's not a great one. I actually should redo this one, but you can see it, a time lapse. And what this was part of the project I did last year all summer. I had time lapse camera going on almost all summer, 1 trail cam and 1 time lapse. And the time lapse was the flash was completely turned off, just taking pictures, using my lights in my cabin as a backdrop, so as to I could keep that flash off and just use the natural light that's already there. And out of thousands of pictures, I get an image of whatever that is in front of my, and what you're seeing there, it's standing in front of my door. Yeah, it's blocking out the view of my door. If I have a picture of it zooming out. Another part of this, that's never gotten to. I never got to post a video, but with that, I found tracks right under my window. At the same time that all this was happening, with the time period that was captured, I actually had footprints. I have a video of it. It was right before the Mothman conference. It was the day me and Eric went down to the Mothman conference. That was that weekend. And because Eric came here, I showed him, I said, check this out. And this was before I knew I had that. I said, check this out. And there was these large impressions, just impressions in the grass moving. But you could see them. And then that kind of coincides with that image. This was from Salt Fork, Ohio. What you can see there is 3 different images of one. Okay, so the upper left-hand picture, you're getting I forget what muscle this is right here, and some of the fingerprints of this, but you can look at the reflection of how much bigger it is than my hand.
Yeah.
Of what you're seeing there. One thing that's important, because a lot of people say, well, that's a bear doing this on your car. Well, bears don't have this muscle. And that muscle right here, the way this looks, that you can tell that's more of a human muscle right there. Then the picture right below it, it's a forearm. It's a hairy forearm. So you know how a lot of people say it has oil in the dust. They're oily and they collect. That's kind of what's there. And then the upper right hand is just a fingerprint, just a generic fingerprint showing what a human fingerprint looks like. And the bigger one that has just straight dermal ridges, that is from the window, blown up. I took that fingerprint off my car. And why I think that's important, show me a human that has a fingerprint that's not swirled. That's what that is. That's a comparison of a human fingerprint compared to what was on there. And there is no swirl on there. It's straight lines across there of what this finger would have been. So, and then the other was just kind of a blown up, but that was at Salt Fork, something like Eric and I were in the woods, and Eric is the one who actually seen this, must have pressed up against the window. And then as cars and stuff drove by, that was kicking up dust, and there's like an oily residue that's associated with these things that I think just collected that hair. It's just more, to me, a smoking gun for that would be explain that fingerprint, because it's definitely not a human fingerprint. And I don't believe you can, bear's a good guess, but I don't think there's enough there that you can say that was a bear either.
That's crazy right there.
Yeah.
Straight lines across it.
Yeah.
Thought this thing was gone. And we're back to the beginning, which is good.
2 pictures.
What?
Go back 2 pictures, please. I want to see something.
Let's see. There. Tell me when.
No, right there. Kane, you got Gary Busey going in your house.
Yeah.
Kane probably knows Gary Busey.
It sure looks like him walking to your door.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I don't know what to think of this.
All right.
I think that, so I think it's the next picture is where there's kind of we didn't really discuss it. There's like a form. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the other thing. We want to get a little strange because Misty likes this. Then you can get on House of Enoch, and I do my best interpretation of what possibly could have happened. that with the camera malfunction. Go into a lot of, even brought Todd Poling, who is a professional photographer, to go over this with me. And basically in the video, which you can see this on House of Enoch, something happens to the camera and you see like a power surge. And then as the power surges down, you see like a form. And I don't know if you guys can see like a humanoid form kind of showing up in this picture that just takes form and slowly develops into something. And it goes from that, gets better, changes a little bit. Its form, and almost, I hate to even say the word, but almost looks more like a dog face. Its face gets elongated. It's a crazy picture. And I go through the whole thing of trying to debunk it and saying, okay, this is probably what happened. Now, standing here with you guys, what I'm going to tell you, I think is very hard for me to explain, is that trail camera, or that time-lapse camera, had been out all year or all summer for months. And this whole scenario, this is like an hour from where it's perfect, crystal clear picture. You see like everything goes haywire. It gets like a power surge, and then you see this, and then slowly it dissipates and it's perfect again. Out of the thousands of pictures that I took that summer, the thousands of pictures that this thing took, there was never another scenario where that happened. And if, we kind of blamed it on maybe dew was forming on lens. Why didn't that ever happen all the other nights that it happened? In the same thread of videos, I can't remember if I even posted this or not, but you in the time lapse above the cabin, you see what looks like a UFO go across the wood line. I don't know if I sent that to you, Spencer, or not. I can't remember. I know I like sending you a lot of the weird stuff, but it's there. And one thing
I don't think so.
Another thing that I've never got a chance to mention is right where that figure at that time was supposedly forming was, I had a print. I have a print there. I have no idea. I don't know if this is just an offshoot. I don't know if this is a one out or if it was a camera malfunction. I don't know. But to get into like some of the stuff you guys have been talking about is, how do you test for that? And should we be testing for that? If we don't have, if in 50 years, if we don't have it, concrete answers that they've got houses out in the woods and they do this and that, then maybe it's time to start at least testing for it. Which that's kind of what I'm going to plan this year. I'm going to just do what I normally do, but I'm going to have more equipment out there to maybe pick up on anything that is possible that we could record. And to kind of circle everything back around to this, I brought up the Serpent Mound for a reason. The Serpent Mound was an impact crater, and it was also an impact crater on a fault line. Now, you don't want to listen to the Historical Society's version of nothing about the Serpent Mound. If you want to know real information about it, you need to look up Ross Hamilton, Thomas Johnson, and the Friends of the Mound. Are the three people, these are the people that are going to set the history straight. And I think it was Thomas Johnson is like he's a rock hound, but he owns a rock shop right down the road from the Serpent Mound. He's like very well known, like he's an amateur geologist, but he helped them figure out that this was an impact crater, and he's NASA guys come to him for information. He knows the area so well. But part of the crazy thing about that is the energy he talks about coming from this fault line. this area where the Serpent Mount is. He says that's very well documented. People will go there and their cars won't start, things malfunction. He owns the rock shop. Okay, he owns the rock shop. He has what people will call doppelgangers. Like, people will see him outside doing something and go into the rock shop, and he'll be sitting there at the counter, like, more than once. Create these crazy phenomenons around all this. And then even like he's got stuff from AEP where the power goes out. Like there's something to do with the energy. And this energy is not just like you can't see it, but weather moves around this area. So imagine living in the ancient times. You're basically at the edge of the world. There's a mile-high rock wall in front of you. And you watch the weather because you don't have YouTube, you don't have TV, and you're paying attention. And all the weather goes around this area. There's enough energy that they could physically see not only what the birds are acting crazy, but weather patterns tend to move around it because of the energy that's coming off of this. And then you got these weird accounts of, he says I think it's a Dollar General store across the street. And he says, yes, and he can look from his house. He says at night when no one's there, lights will be turning on and off. The burglar alarm will go off. All this weird, strange electrical activity associated in some of these areas. And it's hard to me at this point. It's hard. It's all connected, from upper atmospheric fungi that might be the cause of some of the 401 cases, the paranormal stuff that might be involved with energy and stuff like that. I think it's all connected. I think this is a special area, and I think, for me, I'm going to have some equipment out there just not to completely bite off on it, but at least to, like, how do you test it?
That picture that you just had, I think I may have sent them. I'm sorry, my glasses are hitting my hat, but I think I may have sent them to Spencer. I'm not sure, but I know Mark's seen them. I have 4 pictures that I took, and I've never had it happen before. Every single picture was fine the whole day that we were gone hunting. And I walked back into this place by myself to go in and look for a dog while Mark stayed at the truck and listened to the radio. And so I could go and use the restroom also. But I was alone is the point. And so I'm back in here and I just start getting this really strange feeling. So I take my phone out and I just start taking pictures. 4 pictures that I took, all 4 of them. And I didn't even realize because I heard the radio. So I threw my phone down in my pocket and took back off out to the car because I thought maybe he had got the dog. When I get out there or whatever, and we're looking at these pictures, they look like a bunch of different kind of orbs or something like that have pretty much overlapped each other. But you can see stuff in them, and they're all different, every one of them. But 3 of them change, and the 4th one is just completely blacked out. There's nothing. There's not a single thing in the picture, but just completely black. And then after that, every picture after that was good. And it's almost in the last picture, like you can see, like what you're saying, like you can kind of see figures in them. And it's almost like in the last one that it's more like elongated, like the face and stuff is kind of trying to stretch out like it's changing shape.
Yeah, that's why part of why I mentioned the Serpent Mount is there's you dig into that. Like it's kind of what I've been doing in my off time during the winter, and the exact pictures that you're describing, they have ceremonies and stuff there, like solstice ceremonies, and they have just normal people there just taking pictures during the ceremonies, and they get their pictures back, and it's just orbs, like thousands, like there's something going on with that. And I know one of the things, because I watched when you guys were interviewing Eric, you mentioned about cloaking. So my question is, okay, how do you test that? If that's a factor, that if we need to look into that, how would you test for that? And I guess that's something all of us would have to. I mean, in my mind, I'm looking at different spectrums of light that maybe can detect something. I'm looking at heat, with some of the equipment that I have. But I will tell you this, because this is something I kind of wanted to mention to you guys when I heard this, is part of those videos that I had that I haven't sent out. I have two or three videos, and it's pouring down rain. And I saved these videos because it looks like you're watching, if you've seen rain on trail cam videos, it's these streaks. There's something that definitely looks like it's walking by that the water's bouncing off of. And it's just something that I'm not going to throw out there and say, well, here you go. But at the same time, I'm going to save that video, and I'm going to put it on the shelf, and I'm going to think of different ways that, okay, if that is an option, and that's not even for me, that's not even jumping off. It's like you can throw anything at this that you want. You just have to know, how would you test for it? And that's kind of where I'm at with it. So again, like we've all been doing some of the same. I still think the thermal stuff could pay off well. My thermal has several different spectrums of light you can kind of use with it. Might detect something. But how about I've got electromagnetic detectors. I've got a lot of stuff, EMF detectors. Why not throw that out there as well, just to see? And then again, anytime I get some stuff in, so because something still triggered it in the rain, maybe I'm going to look at that closer. And then maybe a full spectrum camera. That has different. That's where a lot of ghost hunters use full spectrum cameras, because it's different areas of light, that this different spectrum that you can see in. And I would say the easiest way so when I turned 50, me and my son did an ayahuasca. You know what ayahuasca is? Ayahuasca trip. All right. It's a pretty serious. It's almost like a vision quest journey, psychedelic trip. They did it from ancient times. And one of the things that did was change my perspective on everything. That's kind of when you do something like this, you are changes your entire view of life. But one of the things that happened during this experience right off the bat was this ayahuasca showed me what we're capable of. It showed, and this is not okay. So when you're doing something like this, you've got someone that's not doing anything with it to kind of look out for you or whatever. Within seconds, my hearing was supersonic. My vision, I was watching a squirrel, and I could zoom in with my eye at 100 yards away and look at the squirrel like it was this close to me. And I verified it. I said, can you look out there? Can you see a squirrel out there? And it finally, like, oh, wow, yeah, there's a squirrel. You can see it dropping nuts. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking at it like it's this far away from my face. And there's just so much stuff to it that it's like, wow, it's almost like for us to survive or in this realm, it's almost like I envision it to like a tuner, like an equalizer, and that we're set to leveled out. Everything's leveled out. And during this experience, it just went like this. And it was like, holy wow, this is what you're capable. Like if we were just tuned a little different, we would see more, we would hear more. It was a life-changing experience for me And it's just, I've always walked away from that thinking like, if these things have any inkling of something like that, because now that I know in my heart that this is possible, even with my eyes, this kind of stuff could happen. What if this is the realm that they're already in? And just some of the things, I'll tell you one thing I saw from being on this ayahuasca trip is one of the structures that I documented. Never noticed it before, never saw it. But one of the things I saw through this trip, I was able to recognize there was edibles along the trail, and this structure was built over top of the edibles. And for whatever reason, it was, I would never have seen that, but I was able to see that pop out like, oh, okay, wow, I missed that. You know, those are edibles, right? There's a whole line of them. And I can't unsee that now. I can't unsee when I look at that picture. You know, I can't unsee those. Like, it was like, wow, what are we missing? You know, with a lot of this stuff. And I think a lot of it's with the structures, and we're just missing our brains. We don't live in the moment. We're even when we're out in the woods, we're thinking about what we got to do when we get home. We're thinking about work. We got modern day problems that's on our mind, and we want to be in the moment. But it's so hard to actually go out in the woods and be like a deer and actually live in the moment, where every once in a while, if you work at it, you can do it. And it kind of opens up, you know, where these things reside, deer and the animals. They don't live in our mental reality. They're in the moment. They're eating, they're hearing, and I think we got to get closer to that in order to move forward. You know, I just wanted to share that it was something that happened to me that just turned my life upside down and gave me a whole different perspective on what this is all about. And actually, from doing that ayahuasca trip, Bigfoot wasn't like, that was like nothing. Like, it was, the fascination with that was just the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's so much more. It's turned me inward and turned me, like, there's so much we don't know. There's so much about the universe. There's so much wonder and stuff that we just don't know. You know, we'll never, our human minds will never be able to understand it all, because infinity is infinite knowledge. So it's foolish of us to think we're going to learn it all. We're just here to experience as much as we can and go from there.
I agree. I've told Mark the same thing. I think the mushrooms and just whatever, anything like that, that's some kind of psychedelic that can allow you to release your mind and let you be more free and in tune with nature. I think there's something to that. The Indians knew it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look at whenever they would go on spirit walks or whatever, you know, they knew something we didn't, and they would see things that, you know, they would go looking for, that they really truly felt like that's what they were on their journey trying to find. And that's how they got there. So
it's a perspective. And it's like, the other thing too, I want to tell people this is, don't sit there and think, oh, well, you're on shrooms, no wonder you're seeing stuff. that ain't how it works. Trust me, an ayahuasca trip, it starts out like this.
We're not saying go take acid, people.
Yeah. You're curled up in a ball. You're curled up in a ball.
Brought to you by psychedelic drugs and serpent mounds and dinosaur tracks.
Yeah, there you go.
Up and by.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's too easy for.
Do not ever tell me again, Spencer, not to go down the rabbit hole.
I want complete control of this show, and I knew it would happen with Kane. I love
it. I'm telling you,
I try to.
We've got so much in common as far as the way we think.
Yeah, but it isn't. It's not like that. Like that experience, you're at a ball. You're at a ball, and if you've done the right experience, you thought it makes you think you die, and it's not, you don't have the opportunity to go see nothing because you're dead in your mind. You're laying there. You're not walking around. It's not like that. it's a life-changing experience, but it just puts it in a different perspective for me. I mean, I could not believe it's just that it's a tool. It teaches, it just showed me like, man, you don't know nothing. You don't know nothing. You don't even know your own abilities. And
well, I'm sure that there's a lot of truth to that. Hold on. Okay. Look, we're at 3 hours, which we probably lost half the people a while ago, but I don't care. This had to happen this way. Just like a lot of people I know, we could do 3-4 shows and they would barely touch on a lot of the stuff that they know about and want to talk about. Kane, I do have to ask you a couple questions. I wrote these down so I wouldn't forget them. Why do you even like Eric?
Why do you like Eric?
well, yeah, that's a good one. He's my ride and die. He's my, our friendship goes well beyond bigfooting, and he's just been a solid guy that's been with me my whole life. And
you weren't supposed to answer it serious. Okay.
I work with him too. So I mean, we have a mutual hate for each other on a daily basis, and then we
have to say this. You have to say this. You have to say this because you work with them. Well, okay. Why is Eric such an ass?
Direct to the point.
What? He knows I would say it.
Of course he would.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Okay, Kane, are you Batman?
No.
Okay.
Just some people are.
I have suspicions. Kane, where the hell did you get that scotch from, and have you drank any more?
Oh, the Ardbeg 10 is what you're talking about. I do. I have a premium version of that.
They made a different version of that.
Yep, I've got even a more unique version of it. But yeah, I still have a bottle of that to share with my unsuspected friends.
You ain't sharing that with nobody. Are you an alien?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It'd be cool if I ever figured that out.
Had to check. Are you surprised at this point that E hasn't just snapped and like gone like completely freaking crazy in the middle of the woods somewhere?
I attribute myself for that. I keep him on an even kill. I'm his voice of reason on a lot of things. Like when he wants to kill people.
You're the voice of reason?
Yes, I am one of the voice of reasons for that man.
For Eric.
Yeah.
This is all starting to make sense now. Kane is Eric's voice of reason. A lot of this shit is adding up. and last but not least, are you the red guides Eric in his vision quest?
Am I what now?
Maybe.
You're cutting out.
Are you the red squirrel in Eric's vision quest?
No, that would be Slade Monk.
Oh, okay. Roll Tide.
Yes, Slade Monk is the red squirrel.
The red squirrel. For a lot of you that are going, what am I talking about? Just go watch some of Eric's stuff. Talk to Eric.
Yeah. Inside jokes. He's got them.
Right. I did have to create a list of people so that I won't forget to mention them tonight. And also, let me just throw up here. Check it out. Got another email. I realized that I was not putting out like an email or anything. So if anybody that's watching this, if you have anything that you want to talk about, maybe you want to be on the show, maybe you want to get with us and tell us something that's happening in your area or stuff that you know about, maybe you've had an encounter, or if you want to talk about serpent mounds or, whatever the ancient spiritual journey thing, contact contact Kane on all that kind of stuff. But no, seriously, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. And before we bounce, of course, we will try to get Kane back on at some point, and that way you can actually have time to ask questions and go over all the stuff. But, don't forget to check out Beast. They will be back on YouTube at some point, but you can still get in touch with us over on the Facebook page and everything. Discover Sasquatch, Chris, check out his channel. Cedar Creek Bottoms with Mark and Rebecca Green. Bigfoot Lake actually has some really cool stories. You should subscribe to their channel and just listen to that. Obviously, Dixie Cryptid. I'm a huge fan. Squatch and Cowboy, Joe, Encrypted Connections. Really like what Kyle's been doing. At least it's real. And that's pretty much all we got for tonight after 3 hours and 6 minutes.
And Kane on Facebook and YouTube.
We already talked about Kane.
Yeah, but don't forget him, though, because he does have a lot of good evidence, a lot of good pictures, a lot of good everything. And he'll talk to you about whatever. He ain't like Spencer. He ain't just focused on one thing.
Whoa.
And he don't even know nothing about that.
No.
It's okay. You wait till next week.
Thank you very much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it. Please like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely go check out House of Enoch. Go back to the beginning and watch all of it. It's a progressive kind of thing. And Kane and Eric are easy enough to get a hold of on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And, next weekend, Sisters of the Moon. See you then. That'd be a good one. Anyway, peace out, people.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kane.
Swipe and steal. I'm a criminal, set to swipe and steal.